The Major Series has seen many twists and turns throughout the 2020 campaign, from racing throughout the high fast ovals, all the way to the technical road courses, but today, it'll be a mix of speed and technicalness, as the top drivers of the Major Series European Pro Split are all set to go for round 10 of the 2020 season, which takes us to the Circuit of Spa-Francorchamps. It's the Belgian GP, live on RaceSpot TV and the iRacing Esports Network. We welcome you to today's action as we get all set to go for what's expected to be a very competitive race today. 33 degrees is your track temp Celsius, 21 is your air temp, that's 92 degrees Fahrenheit, 70 degrees Fahrenheit is your air temp for today. Partly cloudy skies as we get ready for one of the most unique portions of today's event, the Top 10 Shootout. It's a similar format to what you would see in Formula 1 today, with the Q1, Q2, and Q3 format. Drivers throughout the past few days, have taken part in those first two Q sessions, and now the front of the grid is all set to be figured out today in this 15-minute session to determine who will lead the drivers to the green flag for today's 44-lap action, Nolan.
Absolutely, Justin, and let me tell you what, the Circuit Spa-Francorchamps is one of those tracks where qualifying position can very much be key, especially with the opening lap dramas that we can frequently see down at La Source all the way up to that corner at the end of the Kimmel Straight at Le Colmin. There's one of those tracks where you want to make sure you're as far ahead of the action as possible, and already drivers are getting set to get underway. Right now, the driver ahead of the train, Syandra, who is right now slowing up as well. Seems like there might be some of those little qualifying dramas as well as drivers debate to see which one will be the first one to get a tow down that long Kimmel Straight.
For those tuning into a Major Series event for the first time, the way this essentially works is it's similar to what you would see in real life in terms of how the format plays out for qualifying. It's similar to that as well for many of the air events in the Major Series. The drivers had qualified in separate groupings for Q1, then for Q2 to set themselves up to see if they can get into this position, the Top 10 Shootout. As per real life, the Top 10 Shootout determines who will start inside the Top 10. And many of the top drivers in the qualifying sessions are expected to be contenders today. We've talked a little bit before in pre-race about the man you see on screen, Syandra. We've seen him earlier on this season at Le Mans. He's back today here at the Circuit of Spa-Francorchamps. Him and his teammate Dallas Pataska from Satellite Racing expect to be two of the favorites. They were two of the quickest drivers in practice, Nolan.
Indeed, two of the quickest cars in practice. We're expecting another strong showing from Syandra going into today's race. Of course, he was about half a second off of his teammate Dallas Pataska's time over in practice. A lot can change between practice and qualifying. Right now, you're taking a look at two of the other cars, one of them being Ross Banfield for the Unorthodox Motorsports Racing team, and Yal Valverde driving for Kinetic Racing just up the road. Now, these were two drivers that were just drafted out to the down the Kimmel Straight. Yal Valverde was given a big tow to Ross Banfield. Banfield, since then, has backed off a little bit. It seems like maybe he's trying to set himself up for the next lap. The draft is one of these, it's one of the situations where it can be very, very crucial, particularly down this very long kind of bent straightaway that they're going through right now as they thunder out towards Blanchimont. And of course, from Radion all the way down the Kimmel Straight, it is so, so crucial to have the draft. If there's one thing you don't want to be doing, is to be giving the tow to one of your rivals.
Absolutely at this point, especially since it will help you with the draft, but hurt you as well, though, in the dirty air. The drivers in this top 10 shootout, by the way, Andrea Valverde, Ross Banfield, along with Dawson Brock, who was 10th in qualifying in Q2. Wolf, Ryan Mader is back on the racetrack again after his strong performance on the dirt. Isaac Snyder, Eric Mickey, rounding out your 10 drivers in today's top 10 shootout. Taking a look at the Bombshell Motorsports machine in last round, remember, was so dominant on the dirt, a former pro in the iRacing World of Outlaws and their respective series. Now, he's testing his abilities today in the open wheel machines and Formula 1 cars, which are not quite easy to adjust to.
Certainly not, and I was even out on the track earlier today in the sim trying to see if I could get myself a clean lap in. Tried for about an hour and never quite managed to do it. These are not easy cars to tackle, and it is certainly far from the easiest circuit to tackle either. It's a very, very treacherous car, and just the smallest little touch of trying to overpush the car will see you spinning clean off of the racing surface, and it really is impressive to see that these drivers are able to control these cars to such the degree that they can, throwing their way around these circuits. It does kind of bring it back to the days of the old iRacing World Championship Grand Prix series, seeing these cars back again once on the circuit. It is always a spectacle to see.
Yeah, but for drivers like Syandra, you talked about a little bit about, yes, the cars behind, if they could stay within range, can get the draft. That'll help you a lot down the Kimmel Straight. But, as many drivers will really likely tell you is, you stay behind someone within about a couple seconds, even in the Williams-Toyota FW31. Dirty air is going to cause a lot of havoc on the racetrack. I've seen many drivers in the open wheel machines this year push way up the track and lose a second by not being able to adjust to the dirty air. That could be crucial, especially since that train you were talking about out the back of Valverde is already separated by 1 second in part with dirty air. Nolan.
Speaking of Yal Valverde, he has put himself up in a 4th place, so that is right down on the 2nd row of the grid for today's race. Kurt Crum rounds out the top 5 with Joshua Wolf. Check that, Ryan Meyer puts himself up in a 3rd place with a 147.187. That is still, though, about 0.8 of a second off of pole sitter Dallas Pataska's time, so there is still a lot of work to be done if anybody has a shot at contending for that pole position, as right now, Pataska is half a second clear of the rest of the field in the timings.
Here's the thing, though, with those two drivers up towards the front. They traded times in the final practice session before this Q3 session 7 times in a span of 15 minutes before they headed off towards the track for Q3 qualifying. That's how quick those two satellite racing machines were. Valverde going to have a big-time challenge to close up that gap. We'll see how he does right now. But talk us through some of the difficulties when it comes to the Circuit of Spa-Francorchamps, especially in this Formula 1 machine. This is the 2009 version of what Williams ran back in the day.
Well, I think there are several different factors that have to be considered here, Justin. Now, one of the big ones is the massive, massive elevation change and the long sweeping corners, especially corners of the likes of Pouan. With the elevation change, the way the air flows over these cars, it is very, very easy for the back end to get light, especially not even over the top of Radion, but in the downhill braking zones. It is so easy for the back end to suddenly snap out from underneath you, and once it does start to snap, there is no chance of recovering it. And in many of these cases, with the speeds that you can carry these Formula 1 cars, if that back end snaps out, you're likely going to be finding yourself backing it into a wall somewhere. So that is definitely, the walls are something not to be trifled with. Neither is the elevation change in a track like this. One of the other difficulties that's going to be coming more of the racing and not so much of the track is the fact that most people are well accustomed to the downforce reduction production system, also known as DRS of the modern Formula 1 cars, the Williams FW31. This was before the introduction of the DRS system, so these drivers are relying solely on the draft and driver skill to get them up through the order.
Absolutely, and keep in mind, we've seen Sain Andra before. We talked about a little bit. Nolan back at Le Mans was known as a very competitive driver in series such as the Sports Car Open in the prototypes. That's one of the bread and butters on the iRacing service. Curious to see how he does in this, and from what I've heard and seen from him, this is also in his wheelhouse for him and his organization, which just so happened to reach a new partnership last week, Nolan, where they are now sponsored by VRS as well for their respective cars, where all their drivers for the respective sims are expected to receive VRS direct drive wheels as part of that sponsorship. In turn, the organization, which races in real life as well, will be bringing the VRS's direct drive steering wheel systems as part of their setup that they bring to the racetrack each week in their demonstrations for virtual sim racing.
So there you have it, definitely a big name sponsor, one that has been around for years upon years in is of course VRS, so good to see the Satellite Racing manage to pick themselves up what is no doubt going to be a worthy sponsor, definitely one that you want to have on your car. So right now Sain definitely looking to impress with his team, and it will be an interesting one to say the least. I have noticed, Justin, a few drivers have pulled it off the racetrack. No doubt some maybe to come down and get fresh tires perhaps, or potentially going out for another stint.
Yeah, and that's one of the actual great points to bring up here too, is remembering real-world qualifying now in Formula 1 these days. Usually you want to put a lap or two at the very most on a set of tires, then you burn it up. But the interesting thing is how these tires, do you feel, Nolan, are going to work now for the iRacing equivalent from what they ran in 2009, because the tire compounds, even the tire manufacturer, was much more different back in the day.
It's going to be interesting, and I think that's one of the things that really kind of separates these cars about as, oh, hello, Ross Banfield actually has just had a major incident on one of his hot laps, lost the back end of the car on the curb. Now, that's another thing to take note of with these cars, is that there you can see the car, no front wing, no rear wing. This is, the curbing is definitely something that is not to be trifled with either. The way these cars work, if you get on the curbs, it is like suddenly driving on black ice. So that is definitely the exact wrong thing he needed. I think that might just put a halt in his qualifying effort.
Yeah, not sure if there's going to be enough time really to get the tires back up to heat. Here's the exact reason. Right here, that curbing on the right side, as you mentioned, like ice, and it just caused his car to wobble back and forth, and that's something that could be a danger for today if you take too much curbing.
So absolutely. It's something that Spa is actually very famous for, is having cars upset on the curbing. One of the big ones could be over the top of Radion. That's a very easy place to lose a car. As you crest the hill, the back of the car will get very, very light, and it'll be very easy for the car to shoot out from underneath you. But taking too much curbing is definitely going to be a key factor. Clearly, though, Joshua Wolf not too concerned about it. He is trying to tackle the apex as much as he can and take as much of the exit curbing as he can as well to maximize the most out of that line. But through corners like maybe this one, he's definitely really being careful about where he puts those front wheels. Will he make the same mistake as Banfield? No, he will not. Only just glances it with those right side tires. So the curbing is definitely one that is not to be trifled with here, especially as he moves his way through Pouan. This is one of the huge, huge danger spots for this Williams Formula 1 car. The way the corner is so fast with the double apexes, and the fact that it's downhill makes it one of the most challenging corners on the track.
Keep in mind, Wolf, one of the drivers in this top 10 shootout, needing strong points today overall. Kurt Crum is third, Wolf is in fourth. Wolf needed to close a 196-point gap to Valverde. Ross Banfield 176 points back, and the points leads in P2. So in other words, good track position could be very crucial today, Nolan, to be able to close up to and eat into the gap, especially since Valverde is currently second on the board.
Especially so, Joshua Wolf clearly has a lot of work ahead of him, but he does elect to bring it down to pit road. There is about 2 minutes left in the session, so he is not going to have reasonably enough time to get those tires up to temps. Ross Banfield, meanwhile, is back on the course. He's currently sitting third on the timing boards, just under half a second behind your current provisional pole sitter, Dallas Pataska, and no doubt Banfield's looking to have another run of things too.
Touch upon that last point though, Nolan. Here's the thing, when it comes to road courses such as this, in many cases there is a runoff. And that's the same case in Formula 1 or real life, where yes, the time may run out, but you have time to finish your respective lap, particularly in the open wheel machine. So that's, I think, what Wood just did, for example. Took tires, now has a fresher tires rather, for one last shot. Oh wow, the rest of the machines, they might have barely any time to be able to come down to the pits and take one last set of tires to try and shoot for a better time.
Well, and it is a very long circuit as well. We're at the point now where if you leave the pit road, you're not going to make it back. So a lot of these drivers, they are going to get one more shot at it on the racing surface, but no more. You're either on your last lap or you're approaching the checker flag as of right now and going to take one more. So at the moment, Ryan Meyer is one of those drivers that is going to have enough time for another run. He's got about 1 minute and 10 seconds left on the clock, and he's going to cross the start-finish line onto the start-finish straight. So he is going to be able to take another lap. Whether he runs that out, though, we'll have to wait and see, as Ryan Meyer puts himself up to second place with a 1:46.5. He's just over a tenth behind.
And it's exactly what you see in real-world qualifying, too, in these types of cars. The later you wait in the session, the more rubber is built on the track, and the faster you will go, as well as the lesser amount of fuel in the respective cars. 8 drivers are still on the racetrack at the moment. Check that 7 as Ryan has backed off in the 015 machine. The only drivers not on the track for this final 30 seconds on the clock are Brock and Mickey in this entire session.
So now Ross Banfield throwing his way through the final chicane. He might have some time here. He's got 15 seconds on the clock. He is going to have time for one more lap if he can get the power down and really get it down. Can he make it work? No, he can't. Well, actually does. It's a 1:46.821. Not enough to improve, though. He's going to bail out and not let it go again. So Ross Banfield right now might have to settle for 4th. Yal Valverde in 3rd place. He's just 7 thousandths of a second right now behind Ryan Meyer, and he is looking to also improve on his standing.
We won't be able to add in our time, though, and he is elected to keep the position. Happy with the time of 1:46.507 is where he'll stand. Also, same situation for Snyder. There is a runoff now of about 2 minutes on the clock. Snyder trying to record the time. He had a 1:48.484 on the last lap. This time by doesn't even improve his 1:48.124. That's his personal best in P9. Next driver up, Cy Andra. He's been one of the quickest drivers all day. The fastest times he reached in practice were around the 3s to 4s. In the 1:46 second bracket, Andra looking to improve. 6 tenths is the gap between first and second. A 1:46.657, only up to P4 as a result, Nolan.
And that bumps Ross Banfield right onto the bubble of the top 5 and definitely out of the front 2 rows, so might be a bit of a charge for Banfield. He'll have to make something work to La Source to get it to work. Here comes Dallas Pataska, though, right now, the provisional pole sitter, and will he keep a bit of a tank slapper on the exit? He does improve, a 1:46.305. I have a feeling that unless Joshua Wolf can really pull out one banger of a lap here, Pataska will be your pole sitter for the race.
You see with the rounding on the left side of your screen up to 0.306 to the 10,000th of a second. Wolf trying to bump up his time. Best time a 1:46.922, also bombing a 1:47 that time by, and that was the last driver to have to take time on the circuit. So that means one thing. The top 10 shootout has come to a conclusion. And in the end, it's Dallas Pataska setting the pole time for today's race, with Ryan Meyer starting alongside the front row today. What a session! With Valverde, Andra, Banfield, Crum, Wolf, Brock, Snyder, and Mickey rounding out your top 10 starters for round number 10 of the Major Series European region and its pro split today. Really interesting grid so far, and for Pataska, a much-needed qualifying performance. Remember, he was in the hunt for the points lead just a few rounds ago. He's right now holding on just barely to the top 10, especially after missing a race.
It's indeed so. We have, no doubt, a very interesting 44-lap race ahead of us. And I will say, it is pretty darn close near the start. I mean, 1st through 6th place are only separated by about half a second. And then it really starts to, kind of back off from there. So this is going to be one heck of an interesting race to see what is going to take place here in the 44-lap main event race here today.
Let's take a look at your pole lap to see how things broke down. Once again, Dallas Pataska setting the pole time today, and talk us through this lap as he makes his way around the circuit.
So right now, just through La Source, this is where you have to be very careful. There's a little dip at the apex, and now you can get the hammer down. And from here, in these Formula 1 cars, you're going to be flat out all the way to the braking zone for Lacombe. Flicks it left through a Rouge, up the hill, crests right on back to the left, and now it's a long, straight, it's a flat out, straight up run all the way down the Kemmel Straight. This is the best passing opportunity on the track before a very hard braking zone for Lacombe. Throws it to the right, back to the left, and then has to cut back to the right before thundering his way down to Bruxelles.
This is where it's the most technical part of the racetrack as well, and where dirty air may become a factor for the main event today, for the 44-lap race. As Pataska has a lot of clean track, good run that time off to Pouon. And he talked about the difficultness, especially to make sure you don't take too much curving on the right side. You hit the double apexes right. Good rush to head over towards Campus and Co. all the way to Stop Block before you head towards the final speeding section of the racetrack, all the way up to Blanchimont in the final chicane. This section is so critical in every type of race car, knowing, because if you mess up Sector 2, you struggle to Sector 3 and lose a chance to try and make a pass into the final chicane, as well as potentially put yourself up for grabs to be attacked from behind.
And just like the first sector, the third sector is a completely flat-out section all the way through Blanchimont and up to the final chicane. Another very hard braking zone. Turn it back right and back to the left. Once again, careful to put the power down. It is very easy. Oh, and look at that. He did get a bit too greedy on the exit and lost the back end a little bit, but he still did manage to come away with the pole position for today.
So a flying lap from Pataska, but let's take a look towards your standings. This is the top of the pro standings for today. Valverde, as mentioned, with that points advantage. Banfield, Crum, Wolf, Mickey, your top 5. Thompson in 6th. Brock, Niskanen, Pataska, and Kevith, your top 10. And as mentioned, today might be a very valuable day for Pataska for the point standings. The gap, about 500 plus points between him and P1, all while 2nd through 4th is looking to play catch-up with the Kinetic Racing Europe driver.
Certainly is still a very big gap that Pataska is going to have to reel in to Yao Valverde. Right now, the closest driver to Valverde is, of course, Ross Banfield, sitting in the 2nd position. Banfield had a couple of poor races in the opening races. He had a strong start, but then kind of faltered and stumbled a little bit through the middle section. And he is definitely looking to no doubt improve, as he's going to sit in the top 5 for today's race. And no doubt, Banfield's going to be looking to improve as well in the standings.
Indeed, keep in mind Thompson just outside that top 10 shootout in qualifying. For the teams, meanwhile, it's Grizzly Torque Freak Racing Pro, I should rather say, pardon, who is up top of the pro standings for the teams, with Bombshell Motorsports Incorporated, TDR Europe, along with Kinetic Europe, No Emission Motorsports, UDocs Euro, Can-Am, Elite West Racing Blue, Black Eagle Sim Racing, and Grizzly TFR's Wild Cars. Rounding out your top 10, that top 2 battle has been a heated discussion all season, it seems. It's well known, where they've gone back and forth in those team standings. Today, Grizzly TFR and their pro drivers have that advantage.
They have the advantage indeed, and no doubt they're going to be looking to try to improve on that points lead. Right now, they're sitting about, if my math is correct on this, about 98 points ahead of Bombshell Motorsports. And right now, Bombshell, they are definitely in a position where they're wanting to get whatever points they can get on Grizzly to try and reel that gap in and come away with the team's championship here today. So it is two very competitive teams and two very aggressive teams, as we've seen time and time again throughout not just the 2020 season, but even seasons past as well. So this team's championship, it is one that it's really excited to kind of keep your eye on and watch as things kind of shift back and forth as they move through the disciplines.
Let's talk about how the race will play out today. 35 incidents is your cap, as mentioned, 44 laps in the Williams FW31. That's the 2009 chassis for Williams for their respective Formula 1 campaign. Now, as well, the charity of choice for today is Child Fund International. Childfund.org is where you can find more information and to donate to Child Fund International, where worldwide They work to try and end child poverty in many different countries, including as well in the continent of Africa. Lots of work put in, great work, in fact, by the for the Child Fund, by that respective organization. But for 44 laps, today could be a challenge and a lot of strategy can be on the cards.
Especially with the pit strategy, as a matter of fact, Justin. You know, I was talking to some of the kind of insider sources that I've got prior to this race, and they were telling me that a two-stop strategy is definitely going to be kind of the more reasonable play. A one-stop is possible, and you're going to spend less time in the pit lane if you do that, but you got to kind of balance what is the tire fall-off going to be, because the tire fall-off is going to be absolutely massive when you get towards the end of some of those runs if you try to go for the one-stop around the halfway point. So it is going to be very, very crucial for a lot of these teams to try to balance the kind of risk and reward of the gains and losses that will be taken to decide whether a one-stop strategy will be the way to go or if they're going to go for a bit of a safer two-stop strategy.
Indeed. By the way, with the clock approaching 10 minutes until countdown for green, to remind you that this series is in part presented by the Majors Garage. The Majors Garage is where you can find free current setups for more than 30 vehicles on the iRacing service, including the many cars you see running today. Once again, to find out more, go to majorsgarage.com. You can also purchase premium setups from many of your top drivers in the series, including Dallas Pateska, your pole sitter for today's action. Now, the interesting thing as well is going to be, Nolan, how these competitors take this start today. We were talking about the challenges of La Source, and if you think back to around this era of this chassis, Turn 1 was a very, very busy adventure back a few years ago in the Belgian Grand Prix in real life.
I think most notably would be the very famous 2012 incident where Romain Grosjean had his most unfortunate pile-up, which collected Lewis Hamilton and Fernando Alonso. That's definitely the most famous one. Another famous one has been in even more recent years, where Fernando Alonso shot over the top of, I want to say, it was Giovinazzi in the 2018 Belgian Grand Prix as well, at that very same corner in similar fashion. So it is a very tricky corner, and it kind of opens up wide as you kind of turn in, but then it bottlenecks at the exit, and that is what can be really crucial, is where it tends to bottleneck, because that is where we start to get incidents like what we saw in the 1998 Belgian Grand Prix, with that massive pileup that caused the race to be restarted. And it does kind of peg the question, you know, are we going to be seeing one of those incidents today? Because it would definitely be far from the first that we've seen, both in real life and on the service.
And keep in mind, this could be tricky overall on how you play it, even if you get through cleanly through a source with Radion and El Rouge, as well as the run up the Camel Straight. As a driver, how would you want to take a start, such as today, with many fast drivers, and of course the difficulties of driving around this track?
There are really many different ways that you can try to attack this. If you're from the front, get the best start possible, and then be very, very aggressive up in the front, so you can make sure that you're well clear of the field by the time they tend to bottle up in La Source. If you're in the back, maybe take it easy. Maybe let them get a little bit further in front. Let them wreck if they do, and then you can pick up some free spots from there. If you're in the middle, well, the only thing you're going to do at that point is try not to hit the car in front of you, and pray you're not going to be hit from behind as well.
Indeed here. Less than 8 minutes until the expected green flag for today's action for the Major Series European Pro Split Belgian GP. You had 44 laps on the docket today, expecting up to 32 drivers. That's a lot of cars. The estimated total for the grid was up to 26, which is around that grid size that you had as the max in 2009. 32 is going to be a lot. If that is indeed the case, we'll have to wait and see in a few minutes.
Well, especially since the Formula One grids of today, ever since the really hybrid era took over, has been a max field of 20 cars, has been the typical number. So the fact that we got nearly double that amount when you think about it, go from 20 to 32, it's going to be interesting, especially since there were a lot of the races from kind of the 2010 era were about 24 to 26 cars starting as well. It's still a significant number more, so it's going to be quite interesting to see how this is going to cause for this race start. That's what I'm most curious about.
Keep in mind, many of the regular drivers have made today's grid, but several we've seen in American splits and/or in part-time schedules this season are back on the racetrack. Let's take a look at said schedule. As mentioned, round 10 of the campaign. You have the Daytona 2.4, the Daytona 500 that started things off. Then, oval racing at Rockingham, the World 600, the Indy 500. It's been mostly road courses, mostly ovals rather, but it's starting to shift back towards the road courses for what will be one of the final times this season, third to last road course event of the year.
The other two are, of course, complete challenges in of themselves. You have the 1968 United States Grand Prix, which has the very famous Lotus 49, a vintage Formula One car, and that car, that's just a whole other beast to tame, but we don't even have time to get into right now. And then, of course, have the Bathurst 500 with the V8 supercars, and that's an interesting race of its own, not so much because of the cars, but because of the track. It's a track that very much races like a road course, being boxed in on all sides for a vast majority of the lap. Two oval races still to go as well. Justin, you, of course, have the Silver Crown, which is that's going to be one of my personal favorite events. And then, of course, a race that I think a lot of people are looking forward to as well, the California 500. And that's a race where I'm thinking maybe even you might find myself racing one of the sportsman divisions as well for the series.
That'll be interesting to see how you do. How well do you feel you would do in an IndyCar at Auto Club?
Well, I'll say this much. I won on a whim at an IndyCar race at Michigan, so I think that qualifies me to race in the major series for the Auto Club race as well. The last oval race was the Daytona 500, and that didn't quite go my way, so it'll be interesting to see how things go. IndyCars aren't typically my style, but they can be quite fun on the really fast oval, so I'm looking forward to it.
Absolutely. Under 5 minutes until the green flag expected for today's action. And as we expected, a very large field already. Several drivers have made their way to the racetrack. Amongst the different drivers who are not normally regulars we've seen in pro action. We're expecting to see on track today Kevin Mills, amongst them in the 403 machine. Peter Vostro will be seen on part-time action. John Lane is in the cockpit today in the 64 machine for Missed Apex. And a couple other different drivers, including Sean Brown, looking to make a strong debut in 2020. Today could be interesting to see which drivers can make their way to the top steps of the podium today in this one. I want the other drivers to keep an eye on based on practice times. We mentioned that Thompson was not able to make the top 10 shootout. He was one of the quicker drivers in the practice sessions prior to Q3 qualifying for today's action. Also keep an eye once again on drivers like Mike Gott to see how they do in the mid-pack. Jacques Show to see how he tries to charge for the mid-pack. Travis Henderson was one of the quickest drivers not in the Q3 session as well in practice. And real-world former IndyCar driver Richie Hearn, as we were talking about, also in the field today. As we take a look at some of those cars now in their final practice, about 3 minutes or so until the starting grid for today's action. In the best passing zones, as we were discussing a little bit, maybe the run through the Kemmel Straight up to Lake Home, as long as you can keep the car clean and hug the preferred lines around the racetrack and force the drivers to your side to check up whether it's the preference on cutting through the first leg of it on the right side and getting clear by the left-hander, or trying to hold it on the outside and take the preferred line to Malmedy. Your best passing zone blocks him on all the way to the final chicane today, with the danger zones being Les Sources, Radion, Lake Home, as well as potentially the run out of Pouan, as well as the final chicane for obvious reasons. As these drivers make their way around the track, let's take a look, if we can, towards the weather conditions. A little bit different from what we've seen in qualifying, where it's a bit more on the cooler side for today. In sim time, just past 2 p.m., 33 degrees Celsius is the track temp right now. 20 degrees is the air temp. That's around 92 Fahrenheit, 68 Fahrenheit, the air temp. But the winds being a major difference as well. 11 kilometers an hour, 7 miles an hour to the southwest at the moment. Very high humidity around this 4.3 mile, 6.9 kilometer circuit. 21 turns around the Circuit of Spa-Francorchamps today. All these drivers looking to conquer this track for 44 laps to see which driver and which team can come out on top here in the European region's Pro Splits Belgian GP. Once again, Justin Prince, Nolan Rempo, Hugo Weezy with you in the director's seat for what's expected to be a very exciting race today. And final few moments before today's action, Nolan, your thoughts as we get ready to head towards the grid in the next few minutes.
Well, I think it's safe to say tighten the seatbelts and definitely hold on to your hats, because this first lap is going to be a wild one with a scheduled 32 cars getting set to rumble here in the hills of Belgium. It is going to be a very interesting race for sure, and no doubt there will be moments of plenty to talk about by the race's end.
This is the Grand Prix pit as well. For those curious, so the run right out of La Source is where the pit exit will be, just at the edge of the racing line. Keep that in mind, as now about 2 minutes and 20 seconds into the racing action gets underway from Belgium. Who are some of your favorites for today, Nolan?
Honestly, I'd have to say Dallas Pataska. I mean, he was so strong in qualifying. For a good portion of that, he was well over half a second clear of the rest of the field, and he ended up still being about a 10th clear by the time qualifying ended. So Dallas Pataska is definitely going to be a very, very strong one to keep an eye out for today.
Who do you feel will be some of the underdogs we have to keep an eye on from the mid-pack today?
I don't know. I think Ross Banfield was definitely one of those drivers that he was pushing really hard to the point where he crashed in his qualifying run, so he could be one to make some very aggressive moves early on. He is right now, no doubt, starting to grow a little bit desperate in his attempts to retake the points lead.
I'm curious to keep an eye on Richie Hearn, the first driver bumped out of Q3 at the end of qualifying action yesterday for Elite West Racing Blue. We talked about him, former IndyCar driver, one-time winner at Las Vegas, if you think back to the late 1990s. Thompson also have to keep an eye on him. Expect to start from 16th today. A part of the Total Downforce Racing Europe outfit and a part of Simsa Esports since the beginning of the season, working with them, Total Downforce Racing, and his former organization in this series. I think you also got to keep an eye on Robertson as well as potentially Tom Drelling, them deep in the field in 24th. But your expectations and keys to victory for today as we're approaching less than a minute to your starting grid.
On the opening lap, keep your nose clean. From there, figure it out lap by lap as you go on. Pit strategy could be very, very crucial. This is a long track, so if your pit strategy ends up being wrong, well, you're going to have a long way around the track to get it fixed. So pit strategy is going to be one key that you need to make sure you know exactly what you want to do and nail it absolutely perfectly. That and keeping your nose clean at the opening laps, I think that'll equal a win for whoever manages to come out on top.
It's going to like to remind all fans watching that this series is presented by The Majors Garage. If you're looking for a setup, whether for a series event or whether for your real-world racing career in the virtual sim, be sure to check out Majors Garage to check out various different types of setups, including the ones used by many of the drivers today for baselines, as well as from top competitors such as Dallas Pataska, your pole sitter for today's action here on RaceSpot TV and iRacing Esports' network. With that, we're just about all set to go. The starting grid and the lights are getting all prepared for the drivers today. Let's take a look at how they will start for round 10 of the Major Series for the Belgian Grand Prix. Dallas Pataska starts on the pole today with Ryan Mayer in second. Valverde and Andra start in row 2 with Ross Banfield rounding out your top 5. Kurt Crum starts in 6th with Wolf, Brock, Snyder, and Mickey inside your top 10. Amongst the drivers to keep an eye on inside the top 20, Richie Hearn at 11, Martsoff, Henderson, Niskanen, Lane, Thompson, Baker, Gaunt, Vrbowski, and Michael Lane round out your top 20, Nolan.
And Andreas Robertson starts the drivers outside of the top 20. Michael Hagstrom right beside him on the 11th row. Petro Vostrel in 23rd, Drailing 24th, then goes Belval, Show, Ray Partridge, Sean Brown, Andy Banfield, Mills, Thompson, and Ola Sarkvis round out the 32-car grid for today.
Qualifying split separated by up to 5 seconds throughout Qs 1 and 2 for today's action as we're all set to go. All the cars are on the grid. Lights wait, the green flag's out. We're underway for the Belgian GP. And a good start for Dallas Pataska. Clean start for everybody else. 2-3 wide through the first corner, through La Source. Up towards Alroge and Radion. They now rumble as they try and sort themselves out. everyone's gone through cleanly. 2 drivers did start for the pit lane in Lane and Belleville. Everybody else off and away.
And Syandra having a go at Kirk Crum, nearly ran him over on the exit of Radion. There are a few drivers as well that did get run over in the midst of the La Source in the first corner. Valverde, though, trying to push his way up to first place. They're side by side. Lacoma, Dallas Pataska still holds the race lead. Kirk Crum, meanwhile, falling back as well. Syandra still picks up 4th place, and he's trying to continue to move up the order.
Andrews said he was not happy with how he didn't qualify. Already peaked right behind as you look behind the Bombshell Motorsports machine of Kirk Crum. That's Andrew, who is under attack but bit by Ross Banfield. That's currently your top 5 grouping right behind Pataska and Valverde. The gap between first and second already 7/10 of a second after a great launch for Dallas Pataska up in the front of the field. And more trouble. This is 18th on back. Mike Gahn involved.
So Mike Gahn taking a spin, and this was with car-to-car contact with Trevor Vavrovsky. Both cars getting sent around near the top of the hill, and Vavrovsky got sent into the barriers as well, so most unfortunate for both drivers. Gahn tried to have a look up the inside of Vavrovsky, turned in on him, and that sent both drivers into the runoff. No other drivers were collected, though, in this incident.
Unfortunate that situation. By the way, after the start, a couple drivers you mentioned made some contact through the corner. One driver did get bounced around a little bit, from one of the Bombshell Motorsports machines. Believe that was in respective Marcus Niskanen. Front wing damage in turn from Richie Hearn from that. But the first lap goes to Dallas Pataska. And a couple drivers already as a result here. No one having to get front wing changes on lap 1. Not what you want to see if you're a driver.
Indeed, so some drivers already having struggles. Martzov trying to pin John Lang against the wall. They're side-by-side up to a Rouge. This is a game of chicken at this point. This is the one corner you never want to go side-by-side through. It usually doesn't work. Now Lang trying to fight back down the Kimmel Straight. He's going to have Colin Martzov. Here comes Marcus Niskanen. Will they go 3 wide? They're not going to go for it. Niskanen gets boxed in up front. Eric Mickey is struggling. He's under fire now. And Colin Martzov trying to pull the outside line through Lacombe. Can he get it? 1 car off, and that's one of the Bombshell cars. Niskanen hard into the tire barriers.
And Niskanen not having a strong start to this race, to say the very least. He's now lost some time. Here's what happened in this grouping on the Race Spot TV replay. There were 2 by 2.
2 by 2 and deep on the brace. The question was this one contact? No, it was not. Just got too hard on the power, trying to maintain position, and lost it on his own and went into the barriers. And meanwhile, the battle is on for down the order. Riley Thompson, who was 16th place at the start of the lap, has just put himself up yet another spot. So Riley Thompson doing a fantastic job where he's at right now. And right now, sitting in 13th place for Thompson, he just passed Colin Martzov, who was shuffled out of line in the midst of things as well. So already a lot of very fierce battles early on.
By the way, Thompson's gained 3 spots this lap. Also, meanwhile, some of the teammates starting to work together. As mentioned, Grizzly Motorsport and TFR worked together throughout this campaign. Torque Freak Racing specifically. That's Dawson Brock and Joshua Wood connected together, all while other cars are zooming on by others. That's Baker you see now on your screen, letting a few drivers go. As more contact in front of him, more trouble through the final chicane as already to the pits goes Baker. That's Hagstrom.
Michael Hagstrom, that's contact in the final chicane, and he started losing on his own, and Jacques Cho finished him off, and that bottlenecked the track as a lot of cars ended up getting really checked up with this as we go to the Race Spot TV replay. There was the contact, and everyone else just got bottlenecked behind with nowhere to go, and the track was blocked.
That orange car was Jacques Cho running over from behind. Significant front wing damage. Niskanen has also come in a pit with Baker in that is 3 wide in several parts of the field. Still 2 wide you see in this group in his lane, holding on for the time being.
And it was that group that went 3 wide down the Kimmel Straight, and it was John Lane to come out on top of that mess. Riley Thompson had to settle for 2nd place in that group with Colin Martzov down in 3rd place Richie Hearn in the final position as well. So a very tense moment. This 3 wide usually does not work in a track like this. It is definitely far from the widest track as well, as Richie Hearn definitely seems to be having some kind of difficulty behind these guys as Riley Thompson now tries to run down John Lang.
Yeah, Richie Hearn not having a comfortable time. He was one of the drivers involved in the first lap incident. Significant right front wing damage. P2 side by side. Valverde, Andra, Move Andrew up to second. Now it's a 1-2 run for Satellite Racing early on. Coming to the end of lap 3 for these competitors this time.
Yao Valverde's got 2 long straighters, though, that he can really use to draft off the back of Cyange now and maybe try to pounce back. So the battle for second, I don't think is settled just yet. On the brace for Lasource, who can come out on top? A little bit of a lockup for Valverde at the apex, but manages to keep it straight. Now he's going to have the draft all the way down to the run into Eau Rouge, down the hill, then back up the hill before a very long run down the Camel straight up towards Lecombe, over the crest, and Valverde has got the run. He's already looking for the spot.
By the way, more trouble in the final chicane. Hagstrom got spun around again, all while Valverde gets the run on the bottom side. Into Lecombe, backs off the brakes, allows Andrew to have the preferred line, just not deep enough to make the move.
Not deep enough at all, and Valverde elected to take things easy. Meanwhile, side by side, that is Eric Mickey right now. That is having his own difficulties. Oh, Cyandra's got off. Cyandra actually just went off in one of the corners up front, so second place has been lost. It was a mistake underbraking of his own doing.
And it's a weird one. Look at the Respawn TV replay. Almost a massive wheel hop. To the point where it actually hopped off the ground, Nolan.
That is definitely an unusual one, but that is one of the difficulties that I myself had when I was trying to get a clean lap in to see what these guys would be dealing with today, is downhill braking while trying to turn. It is so easy for that back end to snap up from under you. We talked about this before the race, Justin, and that is exactly what I predicted might happen more than once in this race, and already it has happened more than once, but now it's caught out your former second-place runner. Cyandra's got a little bit of recovery work to do.
Time for a deep breath. As once again, Valverde is now up to second. This time, though, Kurt Krum is within range. He has a teammate, Ryan Mayer, willing to work with him. Andrew, meanwhile, is still right behind these cars. Keep in mind, your race leader, Dallas Pataska, is running about 1.2 seconds quicker than anybody else.
Indeed, and right now he is 4.3 seconds clear of the field, so Dallas Pataska is running away with this. No doubt these battles are helping him to do just that. As there you can see, that is the gap. You can't even see the rest of the field as they crested over Radion. Now, no, Kurt Krum is going to be under. He's going to attack Yao Valverde, who goes defensive. Krum looks to the outside. Who's going to be deeper on the brakes? It's going to be side-by-side through Lecombe, but Krum forced to back out, can't get the momentum done round the outside. Yao Valverde manages to hold on to second place for now.
It's just not able to make it stick that time, Krum. And for if you're someone like Krum, know you might be faster. If you're like Andrew, who wants to gain back positions, what's going through your head on how to plot, how to make this pass cleanly without causing any problems?
Well, right now, he's got to focus on, first off, not running too wide like that. Just got 2 wheels into the AstroTurf, and that likely will count as an incident towards that 35 incident cap. So he's going to have to be careful of not just that, but he also has to be careful that it doesn't push too hard and get too focused on the cars in front. Target fixation has caught out so many drivers. It even caught out a couple of drivers in the Classic IndyCar Series race just yesterday. So it is definitely one of these things where you really need to focus on your own race. Now, though, Cyandra has a big run on Ryan Meyer, up in the 4th position. He's looking to improve. Could see a move here into the chicane. Kurt Krum looks to the outside of Yao Valverde. Deep on the brakes. Valverde on the defensive, and Krum forced to back out. Big bobble though from Valverde.
And an air bobble with the dirty air from Ryan Mayer on the throttle as well. And this is all allowing Ross Banfield as well back into the fight. So now, 5 cars fighting for P2. And here's the difficult part. It's almost become a drafting train. Now one car nearly falls off the track as Cyandra had an air snap of oversteer to go back to the back of the pack.
What did I tell you? You got to focus on running your own race and not making mistakes. That was a little mistake. Got on the power a bit too much. Side by side now. Valverde under fire from Kurt Krum. Can Kurt Krum manage to hang on to the spot, though, because Valverde couldn't fight back, but it's a big block from Krum, and on the brakes, round the outside, Valverde takes the spot back.
Back and forth once again through the straightaways. And this is similar to what you would see today, almost like, with the modern Formula 1 cars, where it's considered a DRS train, quote-unquote, where everyone gets the DRS off one another, and you end up in turn not being able to try and make a move, and you're essentially stuck in a drafting pack. It almost seems like the same thing here, where outside of Pataska, no one else has been able to break the draft whenever they've had even pace so far. even teammates.
Well, this is one of those interesting things because unlike the modern Formula 1 cars, these cars do not have DRS. So we're seeing just how powerful the draft really is as Ryan Meyer almost loses the car and sacrifices a spot up to Syandra. So Syandra up to 4th place now as Ryan Meyer falls back to 5th into the clutches of Ross Banfield. The front two started to pull away a little bit from this train that is Kurt from Yao Valverde, started to actually break away. It's more a 3-car battle for 3rd place now. Banfield tries the outside, but is forced to back off to avoid running off the circuit. Can Ryan Meyer make a look at the chicane? Not close enough.
Absolutely, as Andrew loses a little bit of time off the corner. Now, this is where some of the strategy can really come into play. Remember, a lot of strategy is a talking point in open wheel racing such as this. We talked about at the top of the broadcast the 1-stop or the 2-stop. The amount of fall off these drivers have had so far has reached for some of them up to half a second already in this race.
Yes, indeed. So it is certainly a very interesting situation with these tire fall-offs. So we're going to see exactly how that comes into play when we get down to the pit window. Behind, Ross Banfield made a look for a position on Ryan Meyer. Did not manage to go for that position. Was not close enough to really make the lunge up the inside. And let's be honest, it would be way too early to even think about trying it.
Yeah. The reason I bring it up here, though, is if you're, say, stuck in this grouping and having a hard time trying to make a pass and feel like you're going to be driving around each other, would you try the undercut strategy in say about 10 laps from now to try and break out of this pack?
Who knows at this point? I mean, it would certainly not be it's not without a question. It'll be an interesting one to say the least. And I've just kind of looked through the field, Justin. I'm seeing one thing quite unusual. Isaac Snyder's on the track without a rear wing. I think he got hit off the backside just now in the first quarter.
Yeah, and Isaac Snyder over the radio was not happy. Apparently did get ran over from the back end. His question to his competitors, how many of you will hit me? The person who hit him was Michael Lane, by the way, who has significant damage. So this is not going to be a fun ride to the pit lane if you're Isaac Snyder. There is one fast repair available, but you kind of don't want to use it in part because you can get your wings replaced without using a said fast repair or significant amount of damage repair.
Well, here's the thing. A front wing can easily be replaced with about another 5 seconds added onto the pit stop time, Justin. A rear wing, not so much. Usually in real Formula 1 races, if a Formula 1 is even bent, that's it. It's game over. So right now, Isaac Schneider's having a very uncomfortable drive because no doubt the downforce of that car is completely shot right now. And I think it's admirable that he hasn't gone off. I mean, look at the speed he is carrying, and there's no rear downforce on that car. So it is shocking me that the back has not shot out yet. And I would not be surprised if we saw him take to the pit lane here. He's not. He's staying out. That is a very interesting call, if you ask me.
Do you think he knows he has no back wing?
I mean, he's certainly driving like he doesn't.
The surprising thing is he ran away from the cars who ran to the back of him in the next grouping behind. He's actually gaining time on Robertson, Partridge, and Gaunt, who are just up the road. That's the crazy thing.
I'm going to be a bit interested in this. Oh, and they're about to pass Tom Draley, who's actually stranded on the side of the road. As you see, just backs up into the track. Oh, look out. Oh, and he gets hit hard and overturned his Draley. Huge wreck.
And Tom, not sure what was going on there. Let's take a look, and something broke. That car hooked to the left in the middle of the straightaway.
Right. That is an interesting one, to say the very least. I'd like to get an onboard shot of that if we can, because that is, that's quite interesting if you ask me. I wonder if, I don't know what to say about that one, as here we have an onboard look at this one.
Take a listen and look right about here.
You know, I've said a few times over my career, Justin, that, you know, moments should be sent to iRacing for the top 10 highlights of the month. I think this qualifies for the not top 10 highlights of the month, if you ask me.
So Tom Drelling with the breakdancing moves and the Can-Am racing machine there with the dodge-em moves. A rough run for Tom. As up towards the front of the lead pack, it's side by side. And
into the
contact!
grass.
Andra now into the grass. Everybody's having problems.
Everyone's having problems indeed, so Syandra having yet another issue with him. That is most unfortunate as well. Another driver that has struggles is Colin Martzoff, who spun on his own at the exit of La Source, and his suspension is destroyed because he slammed into the pit barrier. And that is not how a Formula One car is supposed to drive, crabbing all over the circuit, so it's definitely not a good thing at all. And taking a look at this replay now, it was, again, completely self-inflicted. Gets on the power a bit too fast, slams right, and hard into the barriers.
The throttle has to be treated almost like you have a bunch of eggs underneath. Not just one, a bunch of them when it comes to this type of car. That is why, and you can see nearly 3 degrees to the right, 3 o'clock rather, to the right, trying to keep it straight.
You know, when I'm driving one of these cars, the biggest advice that I can give, do not ever put the pedal all the way to the floor until you're out of third gear. If you're not out of third gear, you are going to be spinning those tires. So that's what my strategy is. Do not go full throttle until I'm in fourth. At that point, you should theoretically be safe. Looking up front now to the battle for the last spot in the top 5, Ross Banfield still duking it out with Syandra, who might be looking to have another go.
Andrew still with a clean race car despite the bits of going off in the grass. And a much faster run off the corner. Up the Chemo straight. And the UDOX machine tried to swerve a little bit there. Now tucks back into the draft. Let him on go. So, this is about 12 seconds behind your race leader at the moment. But this allows Banfield to regroup, follow, and try and deal with the dirty air. Yes, but try and get back up to Mayer and Valverde, who have now fallen behind by nearly a full second to Kirk Crum and company.
Indeed, they have fallen back, so this is definitely not good for Syandra. And it's not good for Syandra if he wanted to continue to pick up the spots. He's into the top 5 now as we ride on board, but he's going to have a little bit more work ahead of him if he's going to make his way back up into the podium, because Gal Valverde is about a second or so up the road, so that's going to be difficult for him to manage. They are also approaching lap traffic now. Andy Banfield being forced to get out of the way. Looking back to the fight, though, we've got 2 cars around in the background.
And Kevin Mills in one of his first races of the season involved in this one. I believe that's one of the TDR machines also in it for total downforce. Let's take a look at what happened here with the race spot replay with more trouble. 2-3 wide heading to Lacombe nearly.
Oh, that was Andreas Robertson that got into Mills, and I'm gonna say I don't think that was quite Andreas Robertson's fault. He was following his own line, and he got his nose completely chopped by Kevin Mills. I have a feeling that was all on the 403 machine, so that's definitely not something you want to see. It's unfortunate for Robertson because he just got caught out in the wrong place at the wrong time.
Fortunate for him, Richie Hearn, by the way, has been continuing to have technical problems. He's had more trouble in 13th. Still fighting away with the lead pack, though. Kirk Crum is leading this group. The downside is they're 1.6 seconds off the pace, but you can already tell. Crum knows the importance of the slipstream. You seen that flick in the defensive line? If he stays in that line, Valverde's likely shooting up the inside, so they're being very defensive and strategic on the driving styles now, too. As there's Snyder without his back wing.
And he's had another spin, and I think that back wing has finally caught up with him. Was this a bit of a loss on the back end through the downforce, or was this actually in the braking zone? We're going to look at it here. It was on the exit. Lost the car as soon as he hit the curb. So that's what happened to Isaac Schneider and his little spin. All this battling, though, for that second position has allowed Syandra to close right on in. And all of a sudden, he is right on the rear wing and the gearbox of Ryan Meyer just up the road. Meyer's still trying to reel in Gal Valverde, and Valverde's trying to reel in Kirk Crum, who is starting to pull away by just a little bit through the middle section, but he just can't break away because of these really long drafting sections. Meanwhile, here comes Syandra, looking for 4th place around the outside of Blanchimont, but just can't get around the outside to make it work.
Yes, indeed. Just waiting for the right moment once again, Andra. And you see the difference in the lines here. And the main thing I think I've noticed that's been working a little bit is Andra's trying to take a little bit almost of a diamond corner effect. It's more of a flatter line, so to speak, from the cars in front, and it's given Andrew a little bit better of a boost out of the corners. The downside is there's a little bit more risk of the oversteer we talked about.
It's absolutely a little bit more of that risk indeed. So now the question is going to be who's going to fall victim to that risk first. Oh my goodness! Ryan Meyer trying the outside, gets put onto the grass by Valverde. Sayandra looking for a 3 wide now up the inside, and Meyer gets squeezed out. He's going to put Valverde into the grass.
Valverde off the track. He's back. Going more contact. That was Ross Banfield up the inside. That shuffled him to the left. Still no damage, but the Kinetic Racing Machine may be a little bit mentally bruised after that incident.
So take a look at the replay. We're going to see this. This is a bit of this is a bit aggressive. I mean, it looks as if they're fighting for positions on the last lap, and oh my goodness! I mean, he tried to look up the inside and then just didn't quite work for him. I guess Valverde didn't realize he was going to come along, and then unfortunately, Ross Banfield was just trying to get around him because he was slow, and that didn't quite work out for him either. So all of a sudden, that has really split this battle up. And right now, it's definitely not exactly what you'd be wanting to see. I mean, that's just the
Mayer's off.
That's just unfortunate.
Ryan Mayer's off. Valverde, meanwhile, trying to fight several drivers. The 904 went off the track. So here's an arrow look once again. That mention was just in live action. That was one more look at your replay in that 3-wide situation. But Mayer, later on in Sector 2, did go off the track in the grass and lose all those positions back. He's now in 10th in live action. Here's a look.
So taking a look at this one, and what we're about to see, just what has taken place on this second incident on the 13th lap. Was it just too much curbing on the exit, or was it too much on the entry?
It'll be right around this sector right here where he loses some of the time. Just after this complex. Through campus and stop lot. See a little bit of flick in the grass, a little bit of the curb on the right side, and bye-bye race car.
It's a case of just taking a bit too much curbing and attacking those curbs just a little bit too aggressively. It's, again, something that is very, very easy to do, and it's unfortunate it had to happen to him. Battle on for 9th place. This is Ryan Mayer trying to fend off Dawson Brock. Brock, though, up the inside. Can he make it work? Mayer fighting back, and he is going to be able to hang on to the spot by the skin of his teeth.
Good move, and that's one of the positions he's trying to gain back. Remember, he cycled right around Brock. The downside is for Mayer, he had a lot of grass on those tires after sliding off to said grass. Looking a little bit now on the looser end as the tires are starting to wear down.
This is something to mention as well, because we are at the point now where we're starting to get close to the first pit window opening up if you're on a 2-stop strategy. As we take a look up to this battle here for 2nd place, and now the question is going to be who's going to come down to the pit road first, especially as these tires really start to fall off the cliff.
The only drivers who haven't had significant fall off are the men in 1st and 3rd. Both the satellite racing cars are rocket ships right now. Bataska just set a personal best lap on a 147.2 on worn-out tires. Andras running in the same ballpark per lap. The other drivers, such as groupings such as this, well, they're having this happen. It's Richie Hearn once again off the track. We mentioned some of the front wing damage. He's been having some struggles in the second half of this tire stint. Here's another struggle right here.
So on board with Richie Hearn as we take a look at the replay. Too much curbing potentially, or was it too much power on the exit? Gonna take another look at this here. This is in that 2nd sector, now just entering the 3rd sector, keep in mind. And yep, bit too much curbing, and that unsettled the car, and he dings it into the wall, and that front wing gets bent up a little bit more. So not what Richie Hearn needed at all right now. And you talk about some of these drivers not tending to fall off. It looks like Ryan Meyer might have had an incident as well.
Had several of them, in fact. Last chicane, you see him struggle, then leaves the inside line, and then right about here-ish. Bye-bye.
And I think that was some contact there with Dawson Brock, wasn't it, too, at the exit?
Yes, indeed, right across the front wing on the end plate. And keep in mind, go ahead. Yeah, just was going to say, any damage even on the end plate is very aero sensitive on these types of cars.
Yes, indeed, and You know, especially the way these corners are with how fast they are, you really need every last bit of downforce that you can get to be able to keep up speed. So it is somewhat unfortunate as we once again look up to this battle for second place between Cyandra and Kurt Crum. It's definitely been one of the longest reigning battles we've had throughout the entirety of this race, has been this battle for second place. Everything else has just kind of dissipated and gone away. But now Kurt Crum dives it off the pit lane, so pit window is open, and Crum pulls it off, and he's definitely going for a two-stop strategy.
Looking like that indeed, so could split this up at 15:30 and then try and go an extra couple laps at the end. Or at least try and stretch the next tire stint by a couple laps. So it's going to be curious how this plays out. Eric Mickey is also on this call here, Nolan. Do you feel like anyone else might try and follow suit the next lap then?
Well, usually the way these pit stops work in these Formula 1 cars is when a couple drivers come down, everybody else is going to follow within the next 3 or 4. So this is where we're really going to see who's on the one-stop strategy, who's on the two-stop strategy. Ryan Mayer has also come down to the pit lane out of 12th place as well.
So the window is open, while Banfield and Valverde now scrap for what is currently P3 on the racetrack. Valverde has kind of evened out towards this point, a little bit quicker, yes, than Banfield, but seeing a little bit of that push right there, that's again the struggle spot. As a driver, how do we adapt to that dirty air to try and make sure you don't go sliding off the racetrack?
Well, in order to adjust to that, you really do need to make sure that you know exactly what your car is going to do. And you got to really be aggressive on the brakes to make sure that you can keep as close as you can, because otherwise, the dirty air is only going to back you off even further until you're, not able to really contend for it at all. Meanwhile, this is, I believe, the battle for 16th place between Isaac Schneider and Ray Partridge. This gap about half a second. And watch how quickly this gap is going to run down here, down the Kimmel Straight. It's already under 4/10, and now it's going to be under a quarter of a second, under 1/10. All of a sudden, half a second is gone, but Partridge does not go for the move. He likes to stay behind Isaac Schneider, so a bit of an interesting one there.
And the crazy thing is, Schneider was actually quicker that whole straightaway by about 4 miles an hour. As in the pits, your race leader, Dallas Pataska, going for the two-stop as well. Cyandra, he's staying out. Banfield and Valverde cut him off as well, following in your race leader.
So Valverde and Banfield, this is going to be a battle I'm going to be interested in to watch, because they came in nose to tail. They're still nose to tail right now. Banfield already searching for his pit stall. Do you reckon we could see a bit of a pit swap here? Because it wouldn't be the first time we've seen it. Banfield is up on the jacks, and it's going to be obviously 4 tires for both drivers. Banfield's down, as is Valverde. Both drivers starting to rev up the motors as well, but Valverde's off first.
Yes, indeed, off and away. Quicker pit stop. Banfield a 14.2, a 9-second pit stop. Meanwhile, for just about everybody else, so Banfield had to get something maybe fixed there, do you think, Nolan?
Well, it wouldn't surprise me, because he's had a couple of struggles, especially with Yao Valverde, when he almost ran him over when Valverde kind of cut across his nose after being punted off. And now he's in the battle with Eric Mickey for a spot, as well as Mickey tries to dart his way through. Mickey had the speed advantage right out of the gate because he was coming off of La Source, while Banfield was only out of the pits. So that's already a significant margin right there, and Banfield is not going to be able to defend against that at all.
Absolutely, especially with the up-the-speed route of Mickey, who did the one-lap undercut. That pays off for Mickey to gain some time. However, he's still 4 seconds back to Valverde, 6 seconds now to Kurt Crum, who gained some separation on his undercut strategy. And that's the powerfulness of the undercut. I like to describe it a little bit as where you do the undercut, you can gain a lot more time on everybody else. It's a popular strategy in open-wheel racing, especially in Formula 1.
And now Cyandra is down to the pit lane as well. So it looks like Andrew might have decided to go for an overcut, stay out, and maybe stay in some clean air and see if he could gain a little bit more time that way without having to battle on the pit exits. So we're going to have to see here where Cyandra comes out. He's going to drop out of the race lead. Behind him, David Baker is coming in from 27th place as well as Dallas Pataska as well coming to the lane as well. So Dallas Pataska, isn't this his second trip to the pit lane?
Yes, indeed. So Dallas Pataska with the problem. Your most dominant driver having a problem having to come down for a second bout of service. An unreal scenario, and it might have been a potential penalty then if he has to come down a second time like this. My goodness.
We'll have to see how long he sits in the pit stop for. He's not taking tires, so it's definitely not like he forgot to check the tires. I think it is a penalty. I think you might be right. Potential speeding penalty or an unsafe pit exit. He's out now, and I can't tell exactly what he did. It was a 15-second stop. I think it was a 15-second stop and hold.
It looked like it indeed. Keep in mind, he would have had to serve it in the box for 40 seconds. It was before the pit lane, but looking towards things, he did stay underneath the white line. It might have been just when he tried to launch off the lane, maybe. Yes, indeed, he went 49 miles an hour at the green cone. Of course you're going to get booked for speeding there. As here's a replay on screen with Cyandra.
So on board with Cyandra now, we're going to see if something has happened to what was your net race leader. He's down in 8th place right now, and oh my goodness, yes, way too high to the corner, and then lost it as soon as he came back out and got into the power. Good thing for him to wait, though, until there was a bit of a gap for getting the car back to the inside. So Cyandra, another little spin for him, is going to drop him down to 8th place. And Dallas Pataska, he's right now sitting just outside the top 10 as well. He's sitting in 11th place right now. So Pataska's got a lot of work to do if he wants to come out of a victory on this yet.
So once again, to recap, those who just missed, your most dominant driver who's leading by up to 12 seconds, Dallas Pataska, 15-second stop and hold after going more than 10 miles an hour over the speed limit at the green cone. Your what would have been net race leader, and Cyandra spins around, and now Kurt Krum is in the race lead as a result. And this is now by 2 seconds over Valverde. Then it's Cyandra, then it's Mickey and Banfield. The drivers in front of him on the pylon who have yet to pit are Wolf, Henderson, Brock, Thompson, and Lane, who appear to be at the very least trying the one-stop.
So if they're trying a one-stop strategy, we could expect to see them not come down for about another 4 laps yet. It's a 44-lap race. If you're going for a one-stop, you're going to want to do that around the halfway point. This is not like in real Formula 1 where you have the multiple different tire compounds like the super softs and the soft. You only have the one tire compound to worry about, so they're going to try to maybe do it at exactly the halfway point in order to make sure that they get the maximum tire performance from the first stint and the last stint as well. Either that, or they might try to stretch it a little bit. Maybe see if they can maybe stretch the fuel in a bit longer so they have to spend less time in the pit stalls filling up fuel. This was, of course, one of the final times in Formula 1 where you were able to still do refueling, and we were discussing this even before the race, that refueling could be a factor as well, so we'll have to keep an eye out on that one, which is why you're seeing pit stops not lasting the typical 2 to 4 seconds that we're used to nowadays.
Even down to under 2 seconds in some cases. I've seen 1.8 second pit stops from a couple crews, but for Joshua Wolf, current race leader, we'll see how long he stretches it. The answer is not much longer. In fact, stretches it one more corner to the pit lane this time. So he's now coming in what would put him towards an 18-36 maybe strategy if he was to try and split it.
That is a pretty big ask as well. So I'm very curious to see what is going to happen here with Joshua Wolf. Maybe he was just doing an extended first stint and is going to blast down the second stint and the third as well. Henderson, Thompson stays out and will inherit the race lead, I believe. So Travis Henderson comes down to the lane. Dawson Brock is down to the lane as well. John Lang has stayed out as well.
So Thompson and Lane, the only drivers in front of your net race leaders not yet to pit. The gap, though, is very small for those cars. Thompson, 6 seconds over Lane, but Lane is only about 1.5 seconds in front of Kurt Krum. So keep an eye on those drivers. John Lane has talked about for missed Apex running today's race. That team ran several cars in the dirt race. Robbie Thompson just seen, it's mentioned for TDR, for Total Downforce for points, but running with Simsa Esports today as we take a look at that machine. And good to see a lot of mixed Apex cars in recent weeks in this series. Good to see him back for the open wheel machines as well, with those giant M's on the side.
Exactly. So a few new players, a few more one-off drivers as well coming out to play today at the Belgian Grand Prix in the Major Series 2020 season. And I'll tell you what, Justin, this has certainly been a thrilling race so far. I mean, it's been non-stop battles really up to this point, and now I think it's a battle of the pit strategies. A lot of these pit strategies have kind of branched off of each other now. So we're not going to really see a lot of these battles picking up again until the end of the race, I feel.
Kind of feel the same, absolutely, as you see a bit more grass flipped up there. Kind of curious to see how this all plays out, though, for groupings such as Krum, Valverde, and Andra, because here's the thing. We know Andra's a quick driver. We know he's got a quick car. but he's not been able to put those two together, it seems, to be able to have consistent fast runs with said car without making major mistakes, and that's cost him what could have been the race lead if he didn't spin that car out after his pit stop on cold tires.
There are two things that can win you a race. Speed is one of them, but you can be fast, but you also have to be consistent. I know quite a few drivers that are really, really good in qualifying, but they'll just completely fall off in the race after a few laps because they cannot maintain the fast pace. I know other drivers that don't know how to qualify well because they do much better on a long run. And I know some drivers that can do both, and they are usually the ones that come on out and lead almost every single lap. So right now, that is exactly what Cyanogen needs to do right now, is try to get himself in a position where he can go for as many spots as he can. As we see another swap for position, that was for 6th place as Joshua Wolf falls into the clutches of Eric Mickey.
Let's actually talk a little bit about Mickey. In fact, with that swappage, Mickey's one of the faster cars on the track right now after everything has now been settled out a little bit. In the 149.3s, his fastest lap, and the 148.4s. But here's the part to think about. The average 5-lap pace, currently around the ballpark. In fact, quicker than everybody except for Cyandra on the racetrack.
Speaking of Cyandra, he is still trying to reel in the Kinetic Racing's Yal Valverde just up the road, and he is having a bit of a struggle in doing so. He really is struggling with that dirty air that is being kicked up from Valverde's car in front. He's close enough now, though. He might be able to make a move even into Blanchimont. Is he going to make the look here? He is going to make the look. Cyandra goes up the inside in the textbook overtake there, down the straight towards Blanchimont. Valverde dipped 2 tires into the grass on the entry, so almost lost the car there, but he managed to keep it straight. So good run for them, but that's going to put Cyandra up another spot, though. But he is going to be under fire now from it's going to be Yal Valverde that he is going to be under fire from still. Meanwhile, we do have some other cars that are still coming down to the lane, among them Peter Vostrel from 25th place. So there are still some cars that do need to make those pit stops. Among them, we believe Riley Thompson and John Lang.
1 lap until they reach the halfway point or so for those drivers, by the way, to try and stretch it on the fuel. The other drivers trying the one-stop Partridge, Lane, Belval. So everyone else is on the 2-stop. Just a few drivers as Riley Thompson looking mightily orange. He's actually grown the gap on the race leaders. He set his personal best last time by. So he's trying to stretch this gap before they pit, especially take advantage of fights like this.
Well, what they always tell you is to push extra hard on your in-laps because that is going to mean that it's less time that you're going to lose once you're down in the pit lane and stopped. Meanwhile, we ride on board with Ross Banfield, who is trying to reel in your former race leader, Dallas Pataska, who was in first place and led every lap of the race. That is up until he caught himself speeding by over 10 miles an hour in the pit road and found himself slapped with the 15-second stop and hold. Now, he's down, he's actually up into 8th place right now from the 11th that he found himself in. He still has a lot of work to do, and you gotta wonder if maybe it's a gap that he'll be able to mount or not.
Yeah, it's essentially the whole entire gap, by the way, for Pataska's trying to close. Here's your biggest movers and followers of the race, by the way. Thompson and Lane up double-digit spots, but remember they're on the 1-stop. Crumbs gained 3 spots from the start of the race. Valverde lost 2 spots from his grid slot. Mickey's up 4, -7 for Pataska due to his penalty. Banfield -4, -10 for Mayer. Here comes Lane, though, for his scheduled stop. Thompson pushing 1 more lap.
So John Lang into the pits, and he is going to no doubt lose several positions, as already he is outside of the top 5. So now we'll have to see where John Lang is going to come on out. He was just passed by both Banfield and Pataska. He is going to potentially lose out on the top 10 here. He is going to lose out on the top 10 as well. And now he just has to sit and wait for the fuel to be done. Now, though, he is off and away. Now the only question is going to be, where will Riley Thompson come in, and when is he going to come down?
Doing the math right now, with the pit deltas on average, if you don't speed or make mistakes, as well as if you have to take a lot of fuel, about 36 seconds. As Thompson's in the wall. Your race leader. Unbelievable.
I mean, just as we were talking about not needing to make any mistakes, Thompson makes the biggest mistake, and that has cost him the race for sure. Oh, that hurts. Thompson had a strategy made, and Well, it's all gone. It's all gone now. I mean, that might be a race ender, too, if he's already used that fast repair.
Huge hit to the inside wall, and what a time for Thompson to make the mistake. He ran over the curbs, not just that, to the green AstroTurf and hooked it left.
Yeah, we're going to take a look at the slow motion replay here, and you'll see on the AstroTurf, and that is, when you get there, it is actually, in some cases, more slippery than grass. It is like ice. There's no grip whatsoever. The backhand shot out, and as soon as that backhand snapped, he had no chance of saving that one, and I have a feeling that is going to spell the end of Thompson's day.
And he's got significant damage trying to wheel it, because here's the thing. He takes the toe, he's losing a lap or two at the minimum. But this is not easy, because not only can he potentially cause trouble for anyone he's on the pavement, but as well, it's near impossible to keep that car straight with how many fast cars are trying to get around. This is dangerous for the whole field.
It does look like he's got a tiny little bit of the gap now. The only real car coming up on it right now is going to be Sean Brown and Claude Belval. And they might not even reach him as he throws his way through Blanchimont, which is thankfully a lot of runoff that he can kind of use to, not put himself into danger of the field. And that was just going to go in the grass, so he's elected to keep it off of the racing surface. So props to Thompson here for making sure he stays well clear of the field and doesn't cause any undue problems. And he is going to manage to get that car back to the pit lane. And now we're going to see if he's already used his fast repair or if he's going to have one left. And look at this, Belval coming in right behind him. I bet that's a sight for Belval to see.
Yeah, absolutely. Lane also coming in. Yeah, that pit lane's going to be very active now with the rest of those one-stoppers, but man, Thompson was probably in the best position knowing to try and make it work with him gaining time and having a decent buffer. He might have been within inside the top 10 drivers still by the time he was done pitting, but now you can scratch that out. It's now Kurt Crum and Cy Andrew fighting for the race lead. Just past halfway, 21 laps to go this time.
Cyandra's closing rapidly. He's going to be all over that gearbox as they come onto the front straightaway. Crum takes a bit of a more tight defensive line, but that is going to mean Cyandra can really set him up for the run down the pit straight. Cyandra not able to get the run that he needs down that front straightaway to make it work, but he's going to have more than enough time and space to take that race lead by the time they get off of Radillon.
Absolutely. This has been one of the strengths for Satellite Racing today. The exit out of Radillon in Eau Rouge. Right here. On the left-hander, big-time boost. Here comes Andrew for the race lead. Andrew on the left side makes it look easy. Kurt Crum gives him the space. Moves Satellite Racing to the lead. It's Crum not able to send it back on the inside of Lacombe.
He tried. He definitely tried. He had a look, but was not close enough to safely make the move, so he was forced to back out. Now the question is, can Cyandra do what Pataska did and run away? No, he can't. Andrew bobbles, gets loose, and that closes Kurt Crum right back up to the back end.
Able to hold on to it, though, as Crum had to check up. Kurt Crum now had to deal with the dirty air, though, around the racetrack, as well as some of the dirt spots popping up from some of the slides from some of the drivers in the grass. Crum separate by half a second. Through, once again, Campus off towards Stavlov this time. A little bit closer, but right here, too tight. Loses the time back.
He's got a long straightaway ahead of him here after this corner. It's flat out to the end of the lap, so Kurt Crum now is going to be trying to get the hammer down, bobbles the back end and nearly loses it, almost going for a power slide there on the exit of Stavlov, but he's managed to keep it straight, and he's currently thundering down the straightaway. And I will say, with the way these cars get Stavlov, we saw Riley Thompson do, I think it's admirable that he didn't put that into the wall.
Kurt Crum actually didn't gain a single tenth of a second, even a 100th of a second down that straightaway. Based on what we're seeing, the Satellite Racing machines, whatever they've done with the wings, it almost looks like they've compromised the downforce in the corners, especially when exit, it seems, Nolan, to be able to run away down the straights. That's why they've been able to be so efficient down these straightaways.
What we'll really get to see here down the pit straightaway here is, meanwhile, a big battle going on further in the order. That's Michael Lane down in 8th place. That's right now under fire from a couple of cars behind. So Michael Lane is having some big struggles of his own. Check that, not 8th place, 18th place. So Michael Lane in a fierce battle. This is further down the order, though, towards the back end of the top 20.
So a lot of points on the line. Remember, some of these drivers as well competing in the Sportsman postseason, and points rather. And during today's action, some of those drivers in various different splits, but a few of them have had opportunities to race in the pro split before for extra points, such as Wayne, such as Harper, like a last round, like Mason Martinsoff, who's had problems. Most of those competitors are down in said Sportsman's division today, but some of the respective organizations are represented in both the divisions here, Nolan.
So both divisions being represented here, it would seem, and right now, Riley Thompson, with a brand new car, keep in mind, is looking to make up whatever spots he can at this point. He's all over the back of Ray Partridge now. Partridge, meanwhile, trying to run down Michael Lane. Will Thompson make the look, or will he decide to stay in line? He's going to have a big dive bomb. Might try to go 2 for 2, but he can only get the 1, so he's up in the 19th place now. And Riley Thompson now in perfect striking distance of Michael Lane. Can he have another dive bomb up the inside of LaSource? He is going to have a look up the inside and throw it up into turn 1.
Makes it look easy, so the recovery drive off and away for Riley Thompson as expected to use the fast repair. For those wondering, yes, he did not pit before, so there wasn't a way to use it before then. Before it became essentially a mix of a modified and, well, a demolished race car, to put it quite frank, with the bad metaphor. But here's the downside. Again, the draft, big player in this pack. Thompson looking like he's good in a draft. As well, though, has balanced it out for good corner speed. The difficult part's going to be, though, it seems here, Nolan, trying to defend to keep on pushing forward.
I think now that he's gotten clear down the Kimmel Straight, he's going to be able to really let the dirty air kind of do the work for him, as Michael Lane is going to only fall back into the clutches of Ray Partridge. There's a reason why Thompson was so far out in front, and it's because he was not hanging around back here, so he is already going to be pulled away. He's already almost clear of the draft entirely, and it really is down between Michael Lane and Ray Partridge now in the battle for that position.
Indeed. By the way, switch for 8th. That's Henderson dropping back that spot. Mayer still continuing his recovery drive from his several spins. The downside, the L7 does have a little scrape on the left front of the wing, as well as a bit of damage to the end plate to deal with in this scrap with Henderson.
Yes, indeed. So a little bit of that damage, and that damage could impact him by just the smallest of margins. Every little piece of damage in these cars has a absolutely disastrous impact on the way the car will handle. So we're seeing here, Henderson does not have a whole lot of speed in the corners, does he? He is really struggling right now to maintain that gap with Ryan Meyer to potentially try and fight back.
And a bit of trouble for Ray Partridge, meanwhile. Fortunate for Partridge in the 88 machine, able to get back going. That was around 22nd. The first driver 1 lap down. This is what happened to Doc Barry-Euro's driver.
There's a little bit of a dip right at the apex there at the start of that chicane, and it looks like a lot of the cars, when they kind of bottom out in the middle of that, they're getting very much unsettled. And Michael Lane has actually also had some struggles up the road on the exit of La Source. As we stay on replay and take a look at this, getting the power down, he got onto the AstroTurf on the exit of turn 1 and lost the car. I mean, that's a bit of a clumsy one right there.
It almost looked like that car, what he was trying to make sure it wasn't going to snap off the corner, but actually snapped it right to the AstroTurf for that spin. And he did get a little bit of damage to the front nose as well. By the way, also, as you noted, floored into second gear, which is not a good thing.
Yeah, I mean, that's definitely not the play if you're trying to keep a car from spinning the back wheels, especially when you're running over AstroTurf. That is the exact wrong way, and I'll tell you what, Formula 1 cars do not like to be treated in such a manner, so they'll usually pay you back in kind, and unfortunately for Michael Lane, they did just exactly that. Meanwhile, this is the battle for 5th place between Joshua Wolf and Dallas Pataska. Pataska is still in his own recovery drive and trying to close in the gap up to Wolf and maybe come out with a top 5 finish still.
He's the fastest car on the racetrack. It's down to under 10 seconds nearly for the race lead up to his teammate Cyandra. That's the difficult part. That's teammate. Because they're running only about 2 or 3 tenths of a second difference throughout much of this race. This is going to take near perfect driving for Dallas Pataska to catch up. Nolan, your thoughts on this?
Well, I don't think that Pataska is going to be able to go for a race win. I think he's just lost way too much time, especially knowing who's out in front. So unless Cyandra makes a big mistake, I think Pataska might have to settle for maybe second place, maybe even third. I definitely think he could go for a podium, but he is going to have to really get the hammer down and do whatever he can to try to make sure that he capitalizes every single corner.
Now within draft of Wolf and back towards their best zone of the track. They have been eating everybody for breakfast through Kemmel, all the way to the Kemmel straight. Move Pataska up inside the top 5. Another half a second gain though. Throughout that run, now it's under to 9.3 seconds. Next car up is Eric Mickey. Then it's another 3 seconds past Mickey to the gap of Kurt Krum and Jan Ververde. So, yes, it's going to take a lot of work. And yes, it might be very tricky to get up to Andrew, but Pataska's really looking good in traffic.
I think this is really showing just how crucial setups can be as we look back to our battle for 7th place between Banfield and Mayer. I think the Satellite Racing guys, what they have is they've had themselves a big setup difference where they're set up for the straights and the straights alone, and they just let the dirty air do the work for them in the corners to fend off the cars behind, because they know that with the dirty air, you don't really need to worry about it if a car is set up for the straights. So that's what they have here, and here comes Mayer up the outside of Ross Banfield, trying to take it, and he is going to take the spot away. A beautiful overtake there from Mayer on Ross Banfield.
May look fairly easy, in fact, despite the wing damage. But it almost seems, if you look very closely, it's very subtle. That angle for the wings, where you have wings rather, where you need to be very hawkish in terms of your eye vision. For pit stops especially, you may notice this as well with potential adjustments. It's within a couple degrees on some of those wings. Some of them are a little bit more closer, so to speak, on some of the shots. More of them are a little bit more flatter, like you see here from Bombshell.
And this is 2 Bombshell cars that are in the lane right now. You got Kurt Krum and Eric Mickey just behind him. One of the other Bombshell cars, though, Ryan Mayer, does stay out for an extra lap to continue his battle with Ross Banfield and Travis Henderson. So 2 Bombshell cars coming in for their second and what might be the final stop of the race. We're going to have about 16 laps to go next time by at the line, so that's definitely more than enough to make it on a full tank of fuel. Banfield now, though, under fire from behind as Travis Henderson looks around the outside, and he's also going to gobble the UDOX machine and have a little bit of a stack down the straight.
Lets him on by, in fact, as Henderson up once again another spot. And we talked a little bit about Henderson at the top of the broadcast and expecting him to do pretty well. He's done really well, in fact, up from 13th position to a top 10 car.
And we talk about the way these cars work and how difficult they are to handle, and Ross Banfield proved it again through Lacombe. Might have seen it in the background and had a big tank slapper as he got onto the power and did manage to keep the car steady, but did lose the draft as a result of that. Had to back off, let the tires cool, so it was a bit of a close one for sure. We're going to take a look on the Race Spot TV replay and see what happened. This was on the exit of Lacombe when the track switches back to the left. Watch that wheel and how it shoots out from underneath him.
What a save. Near full double lock to try and save that machine. The purple and green UDOX car still holds on for 9th for the time being. Pataska has pit, though, this time by. Dallas Pataska in for his final stop. And as we expected, trying to go 15-30 and go a little bit longer on the final stint of the tires.
So Dallas Pataska's come down to the pit lane. He was in 4th place before this stop, so exactly what he wants to see here. Did he accelerate a little bit? I thought I saw him, that speed shoot up just a little bit in the pits, but let's see what is going to take place here. Hopefully he doesn't get a speeding penalty again. This time he waits to deactivate that pit limit until after he's out of the pit lane.
I think he tapped the front tire just about off the wall, avoided any damage, but I think he scraped the inside wall there on that onboard.
He did. I just looked back at it. He did scrape the wall just a little bit right where there's a little bit of a pedestrian gate. And that is exactly what he hit. He did hit the wall. So that's a little bit of an unusual one. As we take a look on board and watch the right wing. Does he get damage from this? Because this could be crucial here. Off the pit limiter, turns in, and then right there, the smallest of nicks. And he did bend the end plate in just a little bit. That is really going to hurt on his aerodynamics down the straights.
What a nice catch there from Hugo Ruiz, our director for today's action, and a great shot to show that incident. But Pataska still came out right around Kirk Crum and company and trying the undercut here on this call. Andra, Valverde, Wolf, Henderson, and Brock are still going in front of him. But should note Pataska has actually made this overcut, I should rather say, work to get in draft of Kirk Crum. Remember, he was inside the top 3 before this window opened.
He was indeed, so Dallas Pataska definitely trying to go for an overcut, so he is going to be seeing whatever he can make here. Now, it's now at this point going to be a dash to the finish for the number 23, and in a desperate bid to see if he can maybe come away with a second-place finish. He's just a little ways off of Joshua Wolf right now, so this is going to be pretty darn crucial here to see what is going to be able to make of this. Right now, Pataska right behind Henderson as well, and it is an interesting one, isn't it? Because now Dallas Pataska is sitting down there in the 7th position. He's about 38 seconds off the way. Oh, no, he has to bail out across the corner. Over definitely with the shot, and then he just spun the car. So that is most unfortunate there. I think he wasn't anticipating Crum would break so early, and that forced Crum to actually bail out as well because he had to overshoot his own corner to avoid being run over.
Like I said, fast on the straights, tightness like that, very close to avoid significant damage, but my goodness, that just lost Pataska about 4 or 5 seconds trying to dodge Crum right here in this with lap traffic in front.
And you saw Crum overshot his own braking point too, because he could see Pataska coming and did not want to get run over, so he actually overshot his own braking point as well to make sure that he wouldn't get run over. Looking on board the rear end now, this will be a very interesting, if you look at that, I mean, that's not what you want to see in your mirrors, is it?
No, it definitely isn't. And in turn, Pataska now has to get past Mickey as a result. Cyandra also had an adventure on his in-lap, nearly hit the back of a lap car at Andy Banfield. Andra's now coming to pit. So this is scheduled service for him. Valverde also following suit this time for their scheduled stop. Wolf, meanwhile, continuing to go on like he was for the past few stints.
So Cyandra is now into the lane himself, and now the question is going to be, where is Cyandra going to come out of all of this? Cyandra, right now down to 2nd place. He's most likely going to lose 3rd, as Yal Valverde is also down into the lane. And Cyandra looks like, will he maintain 2nd place on the exit here? That's going to be the big question. It does look like he will be able to hold on to 2nd place. So right now, Cyandra is about 15 seconds thereabouts off of Joshua Wolf, your current race leader.
And 5 seconds ahead for the net race lead. Henderson, though, taking away that spot from Valverde. What a drive for Travis Henderson. By the time this cycles out, a plus 11 on the race if he can hold on to this battle with Valverde. Plus 10 if he cannot. Back and forth, now down the Camel Straight. Side by side, Henderson with the preferred line. Valverde gives it to him.
Whenever you're coming to a battle like that, where you literally are neck and neck down the Camel Straight, it is a battle of the late breakers, isn't it? It's actually 2 things. It's a battle of the late breakers, and it is a game of chicken. Who's going to back out first? Because chances are, we don't see a whole lot of battles, end up without contact going through that little complex. So it always is a very, very entertaining spectacle to see these 2 cars thundering their way at over 300 kilometers an hour down towards one of the hardest braking zones on the track.
Indeed. By the way, the pit stop times. Yes, for those wondering, yes, tires were taken on the jacks by Andra in that situation. But 8.1 seconds for the best of the best. Drivers in some cases have taken up to 9 seconds on the jacks. Wolf, meanwhile, trying to hold on for 12 more laps, again 15 seconds to cushion to try and push. He is now 14 laps onto his stint. The drivers who are trying to stretch on a one-stop are around the 10-11 lap mark this time. Trouble, by the way, for the 907 in Sector 2. He's now had more problems from outside the top 10.
This is Ryan Mayer, and slams the tire barriers there. I think he might have just overshot the corner a bit too much on the entry. He actually checked that he clipped the exit curbs on the entry of that corner. That unsailed the car as he turned in, overcorrected, and the car snapped into the tire barriers, and that sent him spinning off the track. So that is definitely not what we wanted to see at all, but now for Ryan Mayer, it is going to be another recovery drive. Here comes Yal Valverde, though. trying to make another look up the inside. Travis Henderson, that gets close. They make contact in the braking zone to Lecombe, and they somehow both survive it.
Back and forth. Gibson the space, and Henderson a little bit all over the track on that second portion of Lecombe. That was a little bit risky, and you mentioned it. Battle of the late breakers. That time it definitely was the battle of said late breakers there, to be bold enough to send it up the inside with that little amount of space.
It was also bold to get so close as to actually touch Travis Henderson. Contact is definitely never advised, and it's actually closely scrutinized in a few other series when you're racing in these open-wheel machinery. So the fact that neither of them spun out is something in of itself, and just shows how good of car control these two drivers have to not lose the back end. We've seen battles in that section with car contact result in both cars getting spun around. Not for these two, though.
Now keep in mind, one of the things we haven't touched too much upon is lap traffic, which may play a factor potentially in a couple of these groupings. We've seen it play a factor already for that mistake with the Tasca. For some of the groups, they're about to see a thick amount of traffic. Say, your race leader Joshua Wolf is currently in a gathering of about 7 or 8 cars, just about nearly, in a cluster you see on screen. The traffic, remember, it's advisory, blue flags. We talked about this back at Road America, specifically for that IndyCar race, and some of the factors in the closing stages of that races. So lap traffic, it's up to their discretion where they let the cars go, and it's not just simply as, oh, there's a blue flag, immediately have to stop on the track.
Exactly. They do not run by Formula One regulations here, so it is up to their discretion. It really is an advisory flag, and that's the case with a lot of series, and that sometimes can frustrate some lead lap cars with where these cars a lap more down choose to let them through. And we've seen this even time and time again, that a few drivers have even had struggles in this race. I mean, we saw, for example, one of your former race leaders, one of the cars that was just about to come in for a stop, get by one of the cars near the exit of Stavelo, but nearly ran him over because that car slowed to let him through right on the exit of the corner. It is a very, very difficult situation when you're a lap car trying to figure out where you want to let the leaders through, especially if you have multiple of them in the same grouping here, as we're seeing right now in the battle for 17th and 18th between Kevin Mills and Ryan Mayer.
Kevin Mills amongst the drivers at the end of the lead lap. Mayer also now in that grouping. As remember, Mayer had that spin in the hit with the tire barrier. Still chugging along, though. Mills in the default Williams paint scheme with the defense. Mayer not able to send it up the inside. They also have Colin Martzoff, who is also several laps down watching. His family member Mason probably watching with intrigue to see what he does with Mayer now on the left side. Mills lets him go. Martzoff, meanwhile, doesn't get that same treatment in 27th. Check that down 28th at the stripe as he gets the better exit.
Gets the better exit indeed, and he is going to be able to pick up some more of that track position. And I wonder if maybe Kevin Mills tried to let him go here so we could get him on the run up through Radion. He's not going to be able to get that run now for very obvious reasons. We ride on board with Trevor Vavrovsky running just behind this group as well, and slowly closing in on this battle as well, as now Martzoff pulls ahead of these two drivers as well. So now it's about to be a 3-car battle here in the fight for 17th.
Getting intriguing here. Vavrovsky has quietly been running in the back just about this entire day, it seems. Started 19th. Has been running around this ballpark all race. Just hasn't been able to move on forward today in his black and red machine. Just has stayed almost on a treadmill, just running in place.
He really has, and he's not the only driver that's had this sort of thing where you just you keep on running and you keep on trying to do what you can, and it just feels like you don't go anywhere. I mean, I can imagine there are several drivers actually that are feeling, in similar fashion, and some drivers it feels like they might have only fallen down backwards. Drivers like Isaac Schneider, for instance, who started up inside the top 10 but are now struggling to just stay in the top 15.
Absolutely, and keep in mind, the leaders currently separated, on the lead lap I should rather say, minute 47, 1 minute 47 seconds between 1st and 16th. Here comes the run now for Vavrovsky behind, meanwhile, as Mills continues to lose a bit of time. Mills today, a plus 13, so either way for Mills, he's gained time from where he qualified. He was one of the slowest qualifiers on the day. I think, based on that right there, he wants to just finish this race and keep it clean.
Well, this brings us to another part of being able to, get points in a race. You do need to keep your nose clean. That's something that a few drivers have really struggled to do as Ryan Mayer spins up the hill at the top of Radion and clobbers the Armco barrier, and that car is no doubt going to have some major damage on it now. That is one of the worst places you can lose the back end of a car at, and that came because he took just a little bit too much curbing on the exit and got onto, guess what, the AstroTurf.
You're asking, how many incidents were we expecting in Radion El Rouge today? I mentioned one. Why? 1 in 44 chances, because there's a chance one person does it over 44 laps. Guess what? That one person just happened. By the way, Dallas Pataska just passed Kurt Crum for P6. So now Pataska continues his recovery drive after his several mistakes. That was for one of the better cars on this strategy. But with that major mistake we've seen him make before in the opening laps of his final stint, that took him right out of the question for the win. He's 16 seconds back of Andra.
Indeed he is, so that is definitely most unfortunate there for Pataska. He's not going to be able to go for a race win today. Still has a chance, though, to potentially get himself into the podium if he can really get the hammer down now, because Dawson Brock is just 2.5 seconds up the road. Yal Valverde, 8.5 seconds up from Pataska. So there is still the chance that Pataska could come away with the podium here, but that chance starts to fade every single lap.
The only other driver left in the one-stop strategy is John Lane. He is in P8. Travis Henderson's caught up to him. Joshua Wolf, meanwhile, has pit and sacrificed the race lead. Should note, he's rolling into a stall as Cy Andra now leads by more than 6 seconds over Yal Valverde. That also includes in that train a couple other respective cars. Dallas Pataska also within range potentially to battle for the podium. He'll come out right behind Joshua Wolf after his stop.
So now Dallas Pataska up into 4th place, and now just 1.7 seconds behind, so this could be crucial here for Dallas Pataska if he can really round down Joshua Wolf. He's got about a lap to do it before Wolf can get those tires up to temperatures, so if ever there's a time for Pataska to pounce, now is that time.
There's that gap right there in the backdrop. You see there, Wolf 14 seconds behind the race leader, trying to hold on, and he's been able to stretch the tires a little bit longer than anybody else. That's going to be a major advantage. He's got 4 to 5 lap fresher tires than anybody else on the 2-stop now. Meanwhile, Claude Belval having a rough moment now in Sector 2 as well.
And he was just lapped by Yal Valverde in 3rd place, and then just lost the back end all on his own, got the power down a bit too aggressively. He was in the middle of a 3-car battle for 18th position with Ryan Mayer and Jacques Chaux as well. So, bit unfortunate, more unfortunate moments for him. Travis Henderson appears to have also had some difficulties. As we stay on replay, try to have a look around the outside for a spot. Oh, and then almost he did bobble the back end and nearly lost the car.
Took it a little bit different look like that time because it's the second time a move like that's been done on him. The first time, he backed fully off the gas. That time, he couldn't make it stick like he could the first time.
It really does show just how your strategy when it comes to making moves can change depending on the situation in one of these races with one of these cars. I mean, it is so difficult to do what you can and try to, find those extra couple tenths of speed wherever you can. And unfortunately, that one just didn't quite work out. He is still within distance, though, as John Lane to go for that spot before the end of this race.
So to reset, your top 8, Andra, Valverde, Wolf, Pataska, Crum, Mickey, Lane, and Henderson. Separated on the track by 38 seconds. For Andra, the lead is just about 6 seconds between him and the 381. Now the question is going to be, how long can he hold on here? They're on equal sets of tires. They had equal amount of time in the pit lane. Can Valverde close in with the fuel burning down to close off this race? That's going to be the major question, especially with a lot of traffic in some cases, and other battles such as this still heating up for P7.
So 7th place still up for grabs. John Lang under fire from Travis Henderson. Henderson, he's got that nose in around the outside, but he does back off and give Lang the line on the entry to Lecomte. He likes to not really push too hard for the position. He does still have time to make it work, and now he's let John Lang know that he is there and he's ready to pounce. On the note of your race leaders, Cyandra's last lap compared to Yal Valverde's last lap, about a 7/10 difference between the two of them. Valverde's closing in quickly.
Absolutely, as we still keep an eye on Lane and company. Henderson thought about setting it. Big bobble for Lane. Dawson Brock now within range of these drivers. 3 drivers within the red box. Lane hugs the curbing this time as they go through campus off towards Stablot. This time, Dallas Pataska way ahead of these drivers as Lane continues to try and now run away in that said grouping. Here's a look up towards the road, by the way. The said name with Joshua Wolf within sight for that other red box we referred to.
So Joshua Wolf is within strike distance. Dallas Pataska's there. Can he make the look, though? He's going to have that run up through Rouge and Radion. So we're going to have to see, is that car still as dominant down the straights as it has been throughout the entirety of today? He's with Joshua Wolf, but Joshua Wolf is going to get pinned in here by a couple of lap cars. He's trying to find his way by right now. Jacques Show and Ryan Mayer, who are still locked in their battle for their position about a lap down here. Pataska unable to make that work, though. Meanwhile, that battle is still on as right now Henderson is side by side with Lang. A one-car spot as well.
Wolf. That's Joshua Wolf off the racetrack in Lake Home. And a major mistake from him on the corner exit in the second part of the complex.
So that is disastrous there for Joshua Wolf in his fight to try to see if he can hang on to the spots. And it's been a big battle between Henderson and John Lang with all of that was going on. They went side by side up the hill through El Rouge and Radion, and they're still side by side now as finally Henderson takes the spot away after they were side by side for most of the first sector.
And a squeeze off the racing line as well to boot from Henderson to separate that. Let's take a look towards what you're referring to, and this is usually dangerous.
It's such a one-line complex that you just never even see it being attempted, and now look at how close they tend to get here into the braking zone for Lacombe. Squeezes him off and tries to get him out, and then right through the end of this turn, number 5, I believe this is, look at how much of a run Henderson got of them and managed to pounce on the braking zone.
So a solid move that time through Brussels. For Travis Henderson up to 7. The question is for how long. He does have a significant cushion now with a lap car as a buffer. That's Lane up the track that the missed Apex machine will have to deal with. So there's that gap now for 7th, 8th, and 9th. This is again 40 seconds behind your race leaders. At the moment, Brock's still within range as well to pounce on the one-stopper's call. Give credit to Lane. He's the only driver left on that strategy trying to make it work. Everybody else is now trying to dodge a spinning car in that section. Mickey trying to let a car go. Kevin Mills had also spun out of turn 1 with Dawson Brock celebrating being all right in that section. As we take a look still at Mickey.
So that was the pass for 5th place right there. Josh Wolf ducking his way up the spot. Oh, look at one car up on over the grass. That's Michael Lane. That's grinding to a stop against the Armco barrier. Meanwhile, battle is on up front. Brock under fire from Lang. Lang squeezing on the apex. Oh. Contact! And Brock's harder to the wall!
And Dawson Brock was okay. But Dawson Brock not okay in Sector 2. Dawson Brock launched off, and this is the chaos. First you had Mills spun off in the backdrop. That's where the smoke came from. Then a near squeeze into the wall by Lane, and then this happened with Lane and company.
So this was the big drag race down through the corner, and there you can see there was one of the cars that slammed into the Armco barrier, just got squeezed out, and then look at this intense battle, drag racing up through the apex, and then right there, contact sends him off, and no chance there for Dawson Brock to recover that one, and it's big damage on the front wing, which will put an end to any kind of fight for position.
Severe damage now to Dawson Brock's machine with under 5 laps to go, now under 4. Fortunate for him as we take a look at Dawson Brock now still in 9th, but may lose 10th position by the end of this race, and there's an air car off into the grass. It's one of his teammates.
So yet more struggles for that team as they continue to try to find whatever they can and continue to pick up whatever spots they can make for themselves. I mean, this is really just has not gone their way here in the closing laps as we see one car duck it down to the pit road as well. So
that's Brock.
So Dawson Brock elected to come down, no doubt get damage fixed, and it really hurts when your 2-stop strategy all of a sudden turns into a 3-stop strategy.
Yes, indeed. That's going to take him out of the top 10 outright. He did have a cushion about 20-30 seconds to the next positions, but takes the faster pair, no tires, off and away. Brock might still have a shot to fight for a top 12. But still, take a look at one of the bombshell machines. Things are getting intriguing for the final 3 laps or so in this race. A couple position battles still up for grabs. That's Wolf in front, Crum behind for the battle for 4th position, first step off the podium. Check that top 5 as Crum's way up the road in the air bombshell machine by 10 seconds, pardon me, but still. Despite that spin, Wolf still has a chance for a decent finish.
Certainly does. Josh Wolf is still trying to come away with a top 5, but Eric Mickey is going to be trying to deny him that with everything he's got. The gap is just under a second right now, about 3/4 of a second to be exact. And now Mickey trying to do what he can to maybe throw his way around this corner. Can he get another draft up with Joshua Wolf? They've got 3 laps to go now. So not a lot of time left in this race to make something work. 42 of 44 being rounded now. Eric Mickey takes a bit of a wider line there than Joshua Wolf did, and I think that might have just allowed Joshua Wolf to break the draft.
Yes, indeed, 1.4 seconds, so that's not going to help him down the Kemmel Straight. By the way, the interval for the race lead has been shrinking a little bit. It's under 5 seconds now. Valverde's been able to get through the traffic cleaner up towards the front. Andrew's been losing time in the 149s for the past few laps, but now has clean space. Pataska still 11 seconds back for the 3rd step of the podium. Crum 15 seconds back. Then there's this grouping, 25 seconds back or so from the race leaders. Henderson, Lane, and Banfield round to the top 9, with Dawson Brock still in the top 10, believe it or not, despite having to take an extra pit stop. But does take him out of contention for a P9 finish. So, couple spots on the line here for the final few laps of this race, coming to 2 to go this time.
Coming to 2 laps to go indeed, and last time by Valverde was about half a second faster than your race leader, and right now he's got the tow of 2-lap cars in front of him. Now, even those 2-lap cars are not battling each other, so they should both get out of the way without much incident, and one of them is going to duck by and let Valverde through. So this is getting to get really intense here for the final laps, but Valverde's getting checked up now by Michael Thompson, who tried to let him through in the chicane, but Valverde got some target fixation going on and ended up following him deep into the chicane.
That just took all chances for Valverde to close up the gap. Gone. Every single second he had gained for about 5-6 laps was gone in that one checkup. It's back up to 5.7 seconds. But for Syandra, he's now about a lap and a half away as a result from race victory, as long as he doesn't make mistakes. Other positions up for grabs include this massive train just up the road from some of your battles.
And that is just one of those really, it's unfortunate, really, for Valverde, particularly because Michael Thompson's doing nothing wrong. He actually ran deep deliberately to let him through, and unfortunately, Valverde followed him because he was too focused on the car in front of him rather than his own braking points. And now Michael Thompson is under fire for Trevor Vavrovsky in the battle for the final place in the top 15. So right now, Vavrovsky is trying to come away with the 15th place finish, while Michael Thompson is trying to hang on to it.
Now, Thompson, plus 16 on the race, by the way. One of your biggest movers of the day outside of Sean Brown, who's also plus 16. Vavrovsky, we mentioned his quiet run. He's woken up for the end of this race, it seems. Albeit at the end of the lead, just for the last, I should say, battle for the first cars, 1 lap down.
So right now, Trevor Vavrovsky is continuing to round his way around, and he's trying to reel in Michael Thompson. He's going to have 1 more lap to do it, as Syandra is going to take the white flag as he comes out through that final chicane. So 1 more time around, we'll see this race concluded, and battles will be decided. Michael Thompson and Trevor Vavrovsky, though, these are 2 drivers, though, that still have yet to have their battle finished, but it might have just been split up by Dallas Pataska.
Yeah, Pataska needed to get on through, get by some of the traffic, as now the white flag waves up on the stand. Final lap of the Belgian GP for the Major Series European Regions Pro Split. 1 man and 1 team have dominated much of the day. To start the event, it was Dallas Pataska for Satellite Racing. Then, Syandra, one of the faster cars in the race, was able to get the better pit stop window, in part because Pataska sped on the pit exit by more than 10 miles an hour. And now, with just a half a track to go, Satellite Racing looking to get a 1-3 finish in the Belgian GP, and for Andra, it would be his second victory in 3 starts in the Major Series in 2020.
So this is definitely going to be really good for Cyandra. He's just got to keep that car on the circuit. And what a race this has been, Justin. I mean, it has been nonstop action from start to finish. And I mean, what else can we expect from the Major Series? Every race has always been a complete thriller this season, and this one has been like no other. Whenever one battle has eased off, another battle has just popped up somewhere else. And now we're looking to have ourselves a very, very calm final lap of this race.
And a very happy driver probably inside that very happy helmet. Final corners through Blanchimont. Satellite Racing Cyandra had a sigh of frustration after a rough Q3 session. But today, he'll have a sigh of celebration. Cyandra wins for Satellite Racing. He takes the checkered flag in the Belgian GP in the Major Series European Region Pro Split. Second spot goes to Jan Valverde to grow his place lead, and Dallas Pataska locks up a 1-3 for Satellite Racing.
So an overall very successful day there for Satellite Racing, coming with a 1-3 finish, and both drivers first and third on the podium. Jan Valverde having a good day too with a 1-place gain, coming home down in second place. Joshua Wolf with the top 5 finish, along with Kurt Crum, who managed to keep his dreams as well.
Meanwhile, for some drivers, not a great finish to this race. That's Sean Brown coming towards the final laps of this race. Spinning around, he was one of your last cars in the lead lap, and as a result, that lost him a spot for 13th. In total, 14 cars on the lead lap of the checkered flag today, out of a grand total starting grid of 32 cars.
It's a massive field, isn't it, having 32 cars start, and I think we've only actually had like 4 or 5 of those cars fully retire. Everybody else has finished this race, so it has been a very, very good day. About half the field has been scored as a lap down by the time you get to the checkered flag, but I mean, I'm pretty sure a lot of these drivers will take being able to stay out until the very end of this race, with the first of our retirements only really just coming about at the halfway point.
Absolutely, and a great recovery drop for Brock to hold on to the top 10. Richie Hearn recovers to an 11th spot after being in contention at the top 10 with his technical problems. The last drivers on the lead lap, Thompson, Brown, and Snyder, who recovered from no rear wing in that situation. So in total, 14 drivers finished once again on the lead lap today. 32 take the checkered flag. But one organization gets the celebratory wine. Satellite Racing with a 1-3 finish in today's action. An incredible race for what is an incredible organization that's been operating since 2006. The New England regional driver in Cyandra gets to celebrate what was a dominant performance for him and his team. Their drivers led a majority of the laps today here on RaceSpot TV and the iRacing Esports Network. Lots of happiness has to be that case, as, by the way, these cars have also just ran out of fuel.
Yeah, Cyandra was looking to get a bit of a lineup for the team on the front straightaway, and unfortunately, Dallas Pataska is out of fuel. And it looks like Joshua Wolf is going to come over to actually lend him a little bit of a hand here on the front straightaway as they both cut the final chicane. And I'll tell you what, we see this sometimes in stock cars, but you don't see it too often in Formula One cars, as just at the back of the shot, you see Joshua Wolf pushing Pataska back up to the line.
Yes, indeed. Andra sets up on the right. And there's the nice celebratory push. The Dork Freak Racing driver. Your top 3 celebrate now in the front stretch. Let's take a look at your unofficial race results after tonight's Belgian GP for the Major Series and its European regions Pro Split. Cyandra takes the victory today by more than 5 seconds over Jan Valverde, his second victory in a Majors event in 2020 in 3 starts. Dallas Pataska rounds out the podium, while Kurt Crum finished in 4th. Wolf, Mickey, Henderson, and Lane round out the top 8. Shout out to Lane, making the one-stop strategy work for a top 8 finish, starting in 15th. Ross Banfield finishes in 9th, and despite having to take a 3-stopper, Dawson Brock rounds out your top 10, Nolan.
And it's going to be Richie Hearn, who does not lose or gain any positions. One of the only drivers to do so in this race, finishing it off in 11th. Riley Thompson down in 12th, with Sean Brown going 28th to 13th for an overall successful race for the 920 machine, with Isaac Schneider in 14th, Trevor Vavrovsky, the first of the cars a lap down, in 15th place. Thompson, Show, Mayer, Belval, and Mills round out the top 20. After this, you got David Baker, Peter Vostrol, Michael Hagstrom, Andreas Robertson. Now for the cars that are 2 laps or more down: Ray Partridge, Colin Martzoff, Andy Banfield, Tom Draley, Michael Lane, Mike Gott, and then 2 drivers that, of course, did not finish the race: Marcus Niskanen and Ola Sarnkvist. Apologies if I completely butchered that name's pronunciation, Justin.
Rough race for him, 27 laps down, but a very happy race for one Cy Andra for Satellite Racing, coming away with the victory today by more than 5 seconds. Cy, no, it was a rough start to the race with some mistakes in qualifying as well as in the early stage of the race, but today you get to have a sigh of relief and celebratory celebration. You win today's race here in the Major Series. How are you feeling?
A little bit disappointed in myself for making it so hard, and also elated because, I wasn't expecting to win after I thought Josh was going to go to the end on the one stop. I was very surprised when he came in. So, relief, a little bit of frustration as well.
What makes you a little bit frustrated after today?
Mainly just how the race started out for me, just making silly mistakes. For example, spinning on my outlap after the first stop. Things like that, just small execution mistakes that should have made the race easier than it actually was.
It looked like a very strong performance for your cars today, particularly in the straight lines. How was the Satellite Racing machine set up for your Williams Toyota FW31?
Well, I think it was a combination of trimming the car out a little bit and having a longer 7th gear. I heard a lot of people buzzing the limiter, especially when I was coming past them in the draft. And I think we knew that passing would be important, especially once we were coming back past the one-stop guys. So with that in mind, I think the setup worked perfectly.
Overall, strong performance for you and your organization. Dallas Pataska getting a solid points day after having some mistakes himself, including a major speeding penalty. Overall, how would you and your organization judge how today went?
I think based on results, we did excellent. I think a 1-2 would have been preferable, of course, but you can't be too unhappy with the first and a third. We would have liked to do a Mercedes impression, and Dallas was doing it pretty well when he had a 13-second lead, but I believe he had a speeding penalty? I'm not entirely sure.
Yes, he did. He went 12 miles an hour over the speed limit at the green cone.
Yeah, that's something we'll have to, debrief on and sort of build on for next race.
Speaking of next race, it's in the USAC Silver Crowns. Will we see you there at the track?
Ooh, Silver Crowns, that's going to be an interesting one. I can't say. It'll depend on my team's league schedule and my personal schedule, but if I do see you there, it'll be something completely new for me.
Anyone you want to thank for the victory today?
Dallas, Christian, Justin. Justin and Christian will be racing later today in the Americas. We all built the setup together, and we all tested together all week, brought the car to where it is now. So hopefully they can bring home a 1-2 later today.
Congratulations on the victory today for you and your team.
Thank you.
Cy Andra for Satellite Racing, taking home his second victory of the season. One driver ended up building up his points lead, Nolan. That was Yal Valverde. He's with us now in the broadcast booth and stand by with you, in fact.
Indeed we are. So, Mr. Valverde, a decent race for you overall, started third, but did end up to come home in second, about 6 seconds behind the race leader. How was the race from your perspective today?
Well, it was a lot more eventful than I was hoping for, but yeah, very lucky to come out second.
I think eventful is a little bit of an understatement. You were involved in some pretty ferocious battles for second place and even the final steps of the podium as well. You were looking like you were keeping things very controlled under there. You managed to come away on top with that second place. What was your kind of strategy in the middle of those in the middle of those battles?
Basically just remain calm and let the strategy play out. Keep the car safe, keep my head in game, hit my markers, and yeah, fingers crossed everything would turn out good, as fortunately it did.
Well, and speaking of strategy, there was a bit of a discussion throughout the midpoints of the race. Some drivers did elect to commit to a one-stop strategy like John Lang. You chose to go for the two-stop strategy along with the vast majority of the top 10 finishers. What caused you to go for the two-stop strategy over a one-stopper?
Well, we tested this during the week, and I was about 8/10 faster on the two-stop, so it would make sense. Also, the car felt a bit easier to drive on the two-stop, so those were the deciding factors.
Next time we go racing for the Major Series, it is, of course, going to be for the USAC Silver Crown. Can we expect to see you there? And if so, what preparations are you going to make for that one? Because admittedly, very different beasts to the Williams FW31.
Yeah, I'll definitely be there. Strategy at this point is just run laps, see how the car feels, see how the setup affects the behavior of the car. So, yeah, pretty straightforward there.
And anybody that you'd like to thank today?
Yeah, as usual, the boys from Team Kinetic, Liam and Will, that were fundamental in this. Liam with the strategy, Will with the setup discussions. So, thanks, boys.
And thank you, Yal Valverde, for taking the time to join us today, and congratulations on second place.
Thank you, sir.
Again, I'd like to thank Yal Valverde and Cy Andra for taking the time to speak with us during post-race coverage here for the Major Series European region and its pro split for the Belgian GP. Nolan, first things first, your final thoughts on an eventful one as we get ready to go Silver Crown racing next in September.
Well, I think definitely this race ended up being a lot more eventful, as Yal Valverde put it, than any of us expected it. It would be a lot more battles than we thought there would be. But moving on to the Silver Crown, I mean, I've driven those cars myself, not too much, but they are definitely whole other beasts to wrangle. For one thing, they got quite a bit more horsepower than the Formula One cars. They're also lightweight, but they, of course, race on an oval, so that's going to be a very interesting race, too, and I frankly can't wait for it.
I can't wait to see what happens either. Of course, it's been a car on the service for many, many, many years, but it's one that is a car you rarely see these days used in some of the official races. It's going to be intriguing to see how it drives and how it runs, especially coming a few weeks, Nolan.
It's a car that really doesn't get a whole lot of love on the surface, does it? I mean, there's not a lot of people that tend to run it anymore, so the fact that they're coming and trying to bring it back for the Major Series, I honestly love to see it. It's a very, very fun car to drive. It's a challenging car to drive. I can't wait to see what the best of these drivers are going to be able to make of it.
Once again, we'd like to congratulate Satellite Racing on their 1-3 finish and Cy Andra on his victory today here on the iRacing Esports Network and RaceSpot TV in the Major Series and the European Region Pro Splits Belgian GP today. I'd like to thank you for tuning in for tonight's exciting action here from the virtual circuit of Spa-Francorchamps. Be sure to keep an eye on the American split coming up later this evening. Coverage starts at 7:45 p.m. Eastern. That will be taken care of by the Global Sim Racing channel here on the iRacing Esports Network. But from all of us here on RaceSpot TV, for my broadcast partner Nolan Rempel, for our director Hugo Weiss, I'm Justin Prince saying so long. Enjoy the rest of your Sunday. We'll see you in September when we go USAC Silver Crown Racing. Congratulations again to Cy Andra and Satellite Racing on your victory today in the Major Series in the Belgian GP.